say thank you for all the work.
Ready? Okay. Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Ms. Huerta, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Paulette Guajardo.
Present.
Council members Roland Barrera.
Here.
Okay, can we see Mr. Barrera too? There he is. All right. Okay. Sylvia Campos. Here. Eric Cantu is not here yet. Gil Hernandez. Here. Kaylin Paxson is not here. Everett Roy.
Here.
Mark Scott.
Here.
Carolyn Vaughn.
Here.
City Manager Peter Zanoni.
Present.
Deputy City Attorney Buck Bryce.
Present.
Okay, we do have a quorum present to conduct the meeting.
Great, thank you, Ms. Huerta. So this morning we have a presentation on the Capital Improvement Program, or the CIP, and an overview of the city's debt profile and potential adjustments to the fiscal year 2026 proposed budget.
Then, Mayor, also after that, we'll do a wrap-up of potential amendments that we've been tracking over the past 4 weeks. So we'll go over that with City Council as well. It does reflect the community input sessions that we've had. Last night was the 7th, so we're making recommendations to amend the budget, just minor, based on consensus statements from the community over those 7 meetings that we've had. Plus, we have some recommendations based on council input over the past 4 work sessions where there seems to be consensus, where we've placed things on a document, and we'll go over that as well after those 2 items. So the capital budget, the debt plan, and then the wrap-up amendments process.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Mayor, council members. Jeff Edmonds, Director of Engineering Services, and I'm going to be presenting the recap of the proposed capital budget and also what we call our capital budget scorecard. This is something that we implemented last year where the budget office has developed a way to kind of track how we're doing on implementing the capital program. So I'll be going over both of those. Now, part of this is review. When you were going through the meetings, the workshops with the operating departments, they also talked about their capital plan. And I'd like to say that this is not really my work product. The CIP is a mutual effort between the operating departments, the Office of Management and Budget, of course, the executive leadership team, and of course, City Council plays a role. Once the CIP is approved, it becomes marching orders for my department, for engineering services, to manage the delivery of the CIP. And of course, that's a team effort and involves every department in the organization, as well as City Council in delivery of those projects. So we facilitate that. Engineering Services acts like a program management office for delivery of the CIP. So, okay, I had a different slide starting here. Well, 2 things I want to call out. The first reading on the CIP is going to be next Tuesday, September 2nd, and the second reading is going to be September 9th. Also, according to the City Charter, Article 5, Section 3, it also calls for adoption by the Planning Commission. That was reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission on August 20th. So what is the CIP? The CIP, I think it's important to emphasize, this is really a planning document. And we update this once a year, and it doesn't change that dramatically from one year to the next. It's kind of a refresh and an update. So we consider it like a 10-year plan, looking at capital projects over a 10-year horizon that are needed. We reestablished a capital budget office in 2018. Prior to that, for several years prior to that, we had kind of a half an FTE that was putting together a book that would be reviewed every year. They didn't even look at the long-range projects back then, and it really wasn't emphasized. There were a lot of departments that really didn't participate in the process. So that budget office was reestablished in 2018. We have been improving year over year going through this process. I think you'll see as I go through, we're getting much better at this as an organization. The way the book is developed, the budget office works with the operating departments to create a list of their needs, and then they identify potential funding sources. And as I mentioned, once you adopt it, it kind of becomes marching orders for us to implement that. Okay, we have three baskets that we look at, three categories. So when we talk about the capital budget, we're talking about the year one budget. So that's the first year, and that's the number that we throw out. The CIP is X number of dollars. Now, for a project to move from long range, which is 4 to 10, into short range, funding has to be identified for the project. Now, sometimes the projects are partially encumbered when construction spans multiple years. A typical project delivery can be from 3 to 5 years. I have some construction contracts that are actually 4-year contracts. But as you're going to see, we're getting a lot better at the projects that are moving into short range are projects that have been identified previously in the long range. So that's something you want to see, and we're getting better at doing that. Okay, this is the way that the current CIP breaks down by department or category. Obviously, the largest one there is water. Now, in the table on the right, we've split that into the Inner Harbor project and all others, and that's close to half and half. The Inner Harbor was 210, and the remaining water was almost 180 million. And as you know, there's a special PMO that's established, dedicated PMO for the Inner Harbor project. So we're managing the CIP minus Inner Harbor, and we basically do the same type of activities that PMO does, but for the remainder of the CIP. Of course, water, wastewater, streets are the big three in there. Okay, these are the funding sources. So revenue bonds is the largest source of funds, and then second is the SWIFT funding, and third is GO bonds. Now, the GO bonds is a category that we consider a very special, even though it's the third highest source of funding. As you know, GO bonds have to go to referendum. You have to go to the voters. And so we take that very seriously. And that covenant that we have with the voters, we want them to have the confidence that we're going to deliver the projects that they approve with their votes. So this is a graphic that we put out in our quarterly budget performance report. And I think we're doing pretty good on this. Now, on 22 and 24, we're getting close to halfway expensed and encumbered on 22 and close to a third on 24. I expect both those to be actually going up a good bit before end of the calendar year. We've got a number of projects advertising or getting ready to advertise for bid, so there should be several Bond 22 and Bond 24 projects coming to council for award before the year ends. So I think we'll finish out the calendar year around 80% on Bond 22 and 50% on Bond 24. So this slide shows what we're calling the FY25 CIP scorecard. And we look at how we're doing based on number of projects that are on schedule versus delayed, and also with the dollars. And that comes out about the same either way. So There were 272 projects in last year's CIP. Of that, 229 are on schedule. And by that, we mean the planned encumbrances were made during the fiscal year. If we were not able to make the planned encumbrance, we call it delayed. So there were 43 projects that didn't meet the encumbrance schedule and are delayed. So of the $1 billion in planned encumbrances, we were able to award, or encumber $861 million of that. So for my department, that was another record. We've awarded $624 million of contracts, which was $100 million more than we did last fiscal year. Now, $147 million is just shifted from last fiscal year to this year, year one, because we didn't get the encumbrance made. So you might wonder, what are the factors, what caused the project to be delayed? So, excuse me, I'm fighting an upper respiratory thing here. So I would say the most common factor is that our understanding is incomplete when we put a project into the CIP. And there are things that, complications that we become aware of as you move along execution. There are constraints and interactions that we weren't aware of when we programmed the project. So that can be due to external dependencies that are beyond our control, such as permitting, external funding, outside stakeholders, land acquisition, not getting the number of bidders, bids coming in over budget, things like that. So, and sometimes we have to delay things intentionally because if a project comes in over budget, we might delay other less urgent projects to create funding. Okay, and I would say overall, we're doing way better than we did when I first started here, and doing better than we did last year. So last year we had 75% showing on schedule, and city managers stated they wanted to get to 80%, which I thought was kind of a stretch goal at the time, and it appears that we've actually exceeded that and reached 85%. So I'd say as an entire organization, we're getting better at doing this. Oh, thank you. Okay, this is a summary of the current CIP. So there's 243 projects in the CIP. So 33 of those are coming from long range to short range. There's 18 new projects, 158 ongoing projects, and 34 projects that were in the delayed category. So total is $765 million. And so the next slides, I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. They cover the same information by category. We'll be switching back and forth between the report card for the FY25 and what's included in the FY26 CIP. So each of the next slides are going to go by category in this order. So airport, there were 7 projects adopted last year in the CIP. 6 of those are on schedule, 1 is delayed. So if you go by number of projects, it's 86% on schedule. If you go by budget, it's 96 because the delayed project was a very small project. So for FY26, there's 10 projects, total of $10.8 million. So economic development, and this kind of cross-cuts various areas. These are TERS projects, These are sales tax projects. So they had 36 projects. 6 are showing as delayed. So that's 83% or 74% on schedule. And one of the projects is showing as delayed I want to call attention to. So that's the Whitecap and Gypsy project, which was a TERS 2 funded project. And pulling the financial reports, they show that as delayed because we haven't touched that money. But we actually decided to do that project with ARPA funds. So that project's actually about substantially complete at this point. And those TERS funds are not going to be encumbered. We're actually going to release those so that can be used for another use. So for FY26, we've got 23 projects in the economic development category for a total of $23 million. Parks and Marina, we had 45 projects, 38 on schedule, so we're about 84 or 74% on schedule, depending on how you slice it. So 3 projects that it's really going to be one contract, one project, is the Greenwood Sports Complex is listed as 3 separate projects in the CIP. That's getting ready to bid, so we'll be bringing contract award before the end of the year on that one. So for FY26, we have 36 projects for a total of almost $38 million. Public facilities, they had 19 projects last year. 2 were delayed. So their performance is 90% almost or better. For FY26, 15 projects for a total of $12 million. So public health and safety, 18 projects. The 4 projects that were delayed are solid waste projects, and that was intentional. Those were postponed at the request of the department. So for FY26, there's 19 projects for a total just under $34 million. Some of the projects that have been delayed are facilities projects. We've been going back and reevaluating the need on those. And some others, they've been self-performing some work that they thought they might contract out. Streets projects, 44 projects total last year. 36 are on schedule, 8 projects are delayed. Those are mostly bond projects. One of those needs to be canceled due to TxDOT opposition. 2 have had some regulatory interference, but those hurdles have been cleared, and those should be awarded before the end of the year. So for FY26, there's 46 projects, total of just over $76 million. Gas had 8 projects last year. 2 of those are delayed, mostly due to real estate issues. So for FY26, a total of 8 projects for just under $40 million. Stormwater, they had 13 projects. We're reporting all of those on schedule, so they get the prize. Now, most of their projects were kind of IDIQ contracts, so Those were fairly easy. They weren't specific projects, but they still get an A+. So still showing 11 projects for FY26 at $31 million. Wastewater, 29 projects, 23 on schedule, 6 delayed. So that gives you almost 80% on schedule. Some of those, it's been intentional due to budget because some projects have come in, the bids have come in over budget, and we've had to postpone some projects. For FY26, we have 24 projects with a total of just under $110 million. Water, 53 projects. There's 7 in the delayed category, so we're around 90% on schedule. Some of the ones that are delayed are due to real estate issues, and there's been some intentional postponement to create budget capacity. And one project was a boat ramp at Lake Corpus Christi, which there's some obvious reasons why we're holding off on that one. So for FY26, 46 projects listed, total of just under $390 million. Okay, I've made it to the end, barely. I apologize for my voice failure. So I'll take any questions at this point.
Thank you, Jeff. And we'll do question and answer here, and then go to the next presentation and do the same, the overview of the city's debt profile. Does anyone have any questions, concerns? Okay, let's move on to, you do have one. Councilman Hernandez.
You know, obviously, we have concerns with our debt, and I know you're about to talk to it. Is there any projects in here that we may look at possibly, you know, prioritizing? I know in the past I've asked for prioritizing of projects, but I don't really see a prioritization list here on these projects on a department level. Was that ever part of the discussions when developing the CIP?
What was the second statement, Councilman? Eric,
Okay.
I heard the first part, but just a second.
All right, so I'll restate the whole thing. In many times we brought this to council over the years, we talked about prioritizing the projects, so you know which ones to do first versus, you know, kind of debating. And there's some obvious things there as well, where some are more easy to do than others. But in terms of selecting projects, so maybe if we have to whittle down the CIP so we don't overextend ourselves in debt, there's not a prioritization of these projects.
I think there is per area. And so the departments have looked at capacity, especially in water and wastewater, and have literally moved some back into future years, and they're not recommending them this year. In some of the other areas, projects there's very few brand new projects, and other areas, projects have been moved into the 26 plan that had been in the 10-year plan or in the second year of the 10-year plan. So there's prioritization based on plans that the prior councils have seen in terms of implementing certain projects. And I don't know if Camille you have anything else, Camille?
You actually, Camille Terrace, CCW, you actually got everything, but each of those project pages has a designation of priority level 1, 2, 3. So for example, for CCW, level 1 means that we committed to this project. It's either completely under design or completely funded. The contract has been executed. There are level 2 projects which are necessary and have to be done. Level 3 are longer range, short, long range, so in the years 3, and then anything that we didn't prioritize as a necessity project, it's in the long range. So we made the effort to make sure that what we're presenting in the short range are projects that are essential to the operations of the water utility system. Similar was done like streets, right? All of them are going to be priority one because they're approved by the voters, right? That's what wanted. They're going to be priority one projects. There's no moving them anywhere. And similarly, on other departments that was done, the whole effort behind this is to show in the first 3 years, projects that are necessary for the operations of individual programs. So for airport or for solid waste or for CCW. So that's the thing. Anything that does not need to be, that can be moved to long range, like the city manager said, those efforts were done to move those into the long range, to make sure we're not just putting projects in the short range that potentially are not essentially needed right now.
Okay, I've seen the priority levels, right? Yeah, but the majority of them here are priority level 1. I mean, you go through a whole section, and I think all of them are priority level 1, and then 2 of them are priority level 2, like for in the streets program.
Well, the streets,
or no,
yes.
wastewater.
For wastewater, yeah.
Right,
Again,
so
consent decree, all of those.
That's not exactly what I meant. I meant in order of priority, right? So you might have, the majority of them say priority level 1, but what, do you put them in order? You have like some ones that you absolutely have to do and others that can be pushed on if you had to. Which one would you do first?
So that's where the breakdown of the years. So certain projects are in years 2 and 3. That's where we're saying these have to be now.
We're talking two different things, right? So like when Jeff presented that they got to 85% of the projects and 15% of the projects didn't get done, okay? So were those the priority projects that we needed to do versus ones that could have been pushed off? Or were they the projects that had to be done but got pushed off for another reason?
So speaking for CCW, the projects that were delayed are projects that are needed and have to be done, but there were either, like he said, we had to do real estate deals, which delayed the project. It's a necessary project. It's for the Nueces River pump station, the line that's coming to ONS. It's a mandatory project, but because of the real estate contracts, that delayed us, but it's being executed at the beginning of next fiscal year. There's the Flower Bluff line. That's a necessary project. It was delayed because of SUE work, so the testing of the ground to make sure so that's a delay for it. All of the projects that are delayed there are necessary projects. Another delay, which happens very often, is if we're getting grant funding. So 2 of the projects that were delayed on the wastewater side are CDBG MIT funded, the mitigation grant. We got it. It came to council a few weeks back. But because we're hoping that money is going to come earlier in the year, it got delayed because the delay in how the money was delivered. But it's a necessary project. It's a project that we've been working for 4 years to get the funding.
Councilman, just one final note on your question is that we don't have the projects ranked, but if you'd like us to try to do that, we can do that for you. These are all assumed to be high priority. They're in the CIP because of that, and they were all approved by council last year. However, if you want us to rank them from 1 to whatever, we can do that.
Okay, I mean, I want to make sure we understand this correctly, because you have like improvements to Labonte Park as a priority level 1 project, and that is equivalent to a bond project on a street.
That's right. That's a bond project.
Because
right. So, but I mean, are we going to have detrimental aspects if that gets pushed off a year?
That's a voter-approved bond program project.
Well, I get it.
Yeah.
I understand, but I'm talking about, realistic aspects of it, not.
I mean, the idea behind why we put all bond projects as priority number 1 is because they're driven by the voter approval, right? The council one, as Jeff was saying, we're trying to deliver these bond projects as quickly as possible, so we prioritize them as number 1, to try to get those projects done now, or as quickly as we can. Obviously, there's a timeline, but if the council wants us to delay bond projects, we could. It was just that wasn't, when we were putting this together,
You're missing my point here, right? Jeff has limited, he has a certain amount of staff that has to prioritize the work that's being done. And so I want to make sure that it's clear to him what the priorities are, right? And so if everything's priority level 1, or the majority of it is, I
Yeah.
mean, how does
Yeah.
that really?
Yeah, so Jeff has a team of, teams made up of various disciplines, and the goal is to advance all the projects almost simultaneously. Obviously, bigger, more expensive, more complicated projects take longer. But if you recall, because one reason we're getting all of our bond programs done now within 4 years rather than 12 is that all projects, at least in streets, go under design 6 months after the vote. The city council, through a mass selection process, awards design contracts, not to the same design firms, but a dozen at least. So private sector partners are designing projects simultaneously while we're bringing construction projects to council. So it's a complex process, but obviously we can't work on them all, Councilman. So there is planning where certain projects in Jeff's work plan and Rotten's work plan have priority, and Jeff should speak to that. I don't know if you can speak to that, Jeff, but.
Well, there is constant interaction with the operating departments on priorities and urgency of projects. And of course, whenever we have a project, for example, come in over budget, the typical thing that we have to do is look at, is there a way, are there projects that have encountered challenges that can't get executed in this fiscal year? And we can shift funding from those projects. So there is kind of an ongoing conversation about this pretty much continuously.
Okay, I brought this up on multiple occasions, and it's not, we talk in circles. So I don't know if it's ever going to get really identified as what's priority and what's not, but okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Campos.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so back to page 6, Jeff. On the 2018 bond, we have, similar to what are the projects that are still waiting for a 2018 bond in 2020? That's, do you know what those specific projects are?
The 2018 bond, we had some projects that were put on North Beach that we couldn't really move forward because we had this question, are we going to put a navigation canal down the middle of North Beach or not? And these projects were crossing the alignment for that potential canal. So there was a lot of time that we had to answer that question before we could really even get out of the starting blocks on those projects.
Yeah, that plus the bridge, Jeff, we weren't, because of the design build nature of it, it wasn't for where certain aspects of the bridge would terminate and ramp off, and so we didn't want to build the street and only to have to tear it up because that's where the exit would be.
So
it's a
the
combination of both.
2018 bond is for North Beach? Is that what
Right.
I'm hearing?
Those were the main projects on that. And I think this is, they're going off of what's in the financial system. I think there have been some encumbrances that may not be reflected in that. In other words, it might not be totally up to date because we use some of that funding, I think, on the North Beach project that may have.
Okay, so now the bridge has been built. Now we have, it looks like we've mostly complete. I mean, I see still some working on the street. So when do we anticipate that the remaining last bonds will be executed?
I think Jeff said it, they're already being executed. Just this bar doesn't show complete dollars spent, but the monies have been encumbered.
Okay.
We brought to council contracts to do the roads, including Beach Avenue, Burleson, and the drainage canal work as well, so.
Okay.
Yes,
There was one other project on there that was at the JFK Causeway, and we were tied up with a regulatory interference, and we just recently cleared that, where we got the wet area under the bridge out there where Snoopy's and Doc's is. We got that declared non-jurisdictional, so we can move forward with some improvements.
that was the Army Corps we were waiting on.
We got that just recently.
But it was the Army Corps, right?
Army Corps.
Yeah, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers it takes time to get permits, so that was a delay. That's why that delay occurred.
Wow.
But the project's moving forward, and there's been a lot of community engagement. on the design of it, what it would actually be.
Yeah. Well, I can understand why North Beach has been, harping on that, that they want results from their bond. So,
Councilwoman, they were in agreement with the schedule, and they know that it was out of the city's hands.
okay.
Yeah, we couldn't reconstruct Beach because we weren't sure of the terminus of where the new bridge would ramp off. But now it's all under design and construction.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, and I also noticed that 2014, it was actually on this, so we actually had bonds from 2014 that we just completed. Is that what I'm saying? Is that? We had bond 2014, 100%.
Yeah, yes, so now it's 100%. So that's the remaining funds, which was like 1% of that bond was for the harbor bridge mitigation. So the park projects that just came to council very recently were funded partially by the bond for 2014. So now, because that was, and it's encumbered, that's now at 100%. But that was the outstanding little bit in that bond.
Okay. All right. The other question that I just had, it's just, why did y'all group public health and safety on this one?
Can you elaborate, please?
Well, you have it on your, I guess, page 17 on the projects. I don't know why y'all group public health and safety budget, 18 projects. You just grouped them all together. Why was that?
So public health and safety, it's a program, right? If you look at this actual summary.
No, public health, safety, and solid waste.
Yes, so so public health and safety consists of fire, police, and solid waste projects. And if you look at the summary page from the public health and safety section in the book, right, they're individually separated. So you know how much is thing. That's a grouping that has been done since I took over the program.
Why is that? That doesn't seem to jive.
It's.
Well,
I think, in part, those tend to be grouped together under a bond category. And you'll see this across multiple cities. You can separate it. This is just historically, this is how they have grouped those categories in the CIP.
Wow. All right, those are the only questions I had. Thank you.
Councilwoman Vaughn.
How many grant writers do we have? One?
We have one. We have two. And then in this budget, in the proposed budget, we added $100,000 for grant writing contractual services.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So we have two that are in finance that can service the entire city. And then each of our departments, some of our departments have dedicated grant writer / fiscal people. So like in the police department, fire department, health district, they have dedicated staff members that write grants often, animal care, similar.
Yeah.
But we added two in recent years to kind of overarch the organization where some departments that might not have dedicated people to write grants, that's what those two positions do. And then we added $100,000 in the 26 proposed budget for.
Well, that's good because they can certainly pay for their salary.
Absolutely.
And it's only 6.3% of the funding. Have we set a goal, say this is how much of this we want you to do? Because if you don't give them a standard, they're not going to reach it.
Yeah.
And I know at the county, and I know I'm not at the county, but that we almost lived off of grants because they don't have any money.
Right.
And so to me, we ought to set a goal, Mr. Sinoni, and say we want you to reach this.
Yeah.
So we can get more funding. And I would be curious because I think the police do it well. I don't know about the fire, but what are they in each department? What are they reaching? How much of that percentage is theirs?
Yeah. So you'll see a greater percentage in the operating budget. So in the capital budget, maybe Heather, who oversees it, can speak, but the amount of grant opportunities for construction is less than operating. So a lot of the grants that we bring to council weekly deal with operating, with staff, with programming, that type of thing. Now, we do have one grant that we applied for the Flower Bluff Trail to Trestle. That was like a $13 million grant, very unique. And so that'll help rebuild that trestle from Flower Bluff to the Oso Preserve. That's a good example of a grant.
That was good,
A lot of these grants that are shown here are airport grants, FAA grants.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll add to that on the capital side, those grant for opportunities kind of ebb and flow. Like Peter said, a lot of times we get more consistent grant funding within our operational budget. The capital projects really do ebb and flow depending on what grants are available and what projects we have that match up with those.
Okay.
Because we don't want to apply just for grants just to be applying for them. We want to make sure that there's a need. And we do a good job of trying to go through and say, okay, we have these projects, and that's what's been great with the long-term planning is we work very closely. Our grant writers work very closely with the utilities, especially to say, okay, what do y'all have coming up? Here are some granting opportunities. How does that fit in with our planned CIP?
And I understand that, and so, but I just hope the percentage goes up that we go forward.
We try.
I know you do.
So,
I know you do, and
yes.
you'll have more help. Thank
Yes,
you, Heather.
Yes, sure.
The other thing I was going to ask, and I may have overlooked it, is, I think we talked about in water that in order for Mary Roads to get more water, we had to have another pump. So is this in the plan? And I could have overlooked it because I was looking at this at midnight last night, so my eyes could have got tired.
Right.
But is it?
Sure. Nick Winkleman, Director of Water Systems. So there is a spare pump for Bloomington and Woodsboro pump stations that have been ordered under the existing capital project.
Mm-hmm.
They will arrive next month. But keep in mind, to fully install those and make them operational, we'll have to shut down the Mary Roads pipeline. So the functionality, we've got to work on that and figure out the timing. Additionally, LNRA is working on spare pumping equipment.
So is this normal? Every time you put a pump in, you have to shut down the whole pipeline to put one pump in?
So
It just doesn't make sense to me. I get it, but it just doesn't make sense because they're in different areas.
well, and let me back up. So when you shut down the Woodsboro pump station, you're limited to pumping Schedule 3.
Okay.
So when I say a shutdown, it's also a limitation.
Still going, okay.
Yeah. So the original design of the pump stations included a space for spare pumping equipment, but it did not include what we call the header piping to connect it to all the piping to actually pump the water into the pipeline. So to do that, we've got to shut down the pump stations. Now, to do those improvements at Bloomington, so Bloomington's needed to pump Schedule 3. So if you shut Bloomington down, the pipeline's got to go back to Schedule 2 or 2B.
Okay.
Is what we call it. Right?
Okay, I just want to make sure we've got the funds to have the pump and to be able to do that in the future.
Right. We're fortunate for council support of those capital projects.
Okay.
And one of them was a change order request that council approved this fiscal year.
Just making sure that.
And can I just add to that, though? So the recent discussion that we've had, and Nick, if you can just stay there for a second, just the Mary Roads pipeline putting 100 million gallons into the pipe, none of that project is in the CIP today. That conversation has come up because of the potential water source, excuse me, at Evangeline. So right now, we're carrying all the water rights that we have through the pipeline, whether it's the Lower Colorado or or Lake Texana. So the pipe is carrying all bought water from the east. When when Evangeline comes online, we're looking at now the potential of putting more than just the 12 million gallons in. But to have 100 million gallons or plus, there has to be, as Nick has said before, a complete redesign of the pumping. So we have to figure out the cost for the engineering, the construction. We don't have any figures on that yet, so that's not in the budget today. But as we move forward with Evangeline, we'll have that simultaneous conversation with the council on the capital cost.
Okay, I just think it's so important for the future that we
Yeah.
have to make sure we have the money for that. Thank you, Mr.
Yes,
Shimoni.
okay.
I only have one more, and it's just because I'm nosy on that canceled text dot that you had to cancel. What was that project?
That was improvements at the Encantada, Park Road 22 intersection.
Okay.
And we had some ideas of changing that intersection, and TxDOT wouldn't approve.
They didn't like it.
What
Okay.
we wanted to do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. On grants, Peter, just a couple of things. I think it may have been brought up before, but we've two, right?
We have two. One is
Ryder?
filled, one is vacant today.
Okay, so we don't have two filled.
No, we have two positions, and let me just see.
Two
They both
positions.
filled? Okay, well, I guess in the last 2 weeks, we filled the second one, so they're both filled.
Are they contracted or are they?
No, the city staff, the city employees.
So what I'd like to see is, how do we prioritize what they work on. We have 29 departments. Pat does an excellent job of, I mean, I know you'd like grant writer, Pat, but you do such a good job. You've got it down. I know Laura is here. I saw her walk in. Libraries, there you are. They do their own grants also, but I know that's a big struggle over there. Animal care services, nobody does anything there. And I know a lot of people up here know there are a lot of grants, probably for all departments across, this organization, but especially animals. So my point is how do they prioritize what they work on? Who says, okay, work on this grant or this department for a grant? How does that happen? And I'd like to see a list, the whole council, of what grants have been attained since we've had a grant writer, or I think we've only had one, right, in the past. This is the first time we have two.
In the current year budget is when we added the second position.
Right.
And it's been vacant filled, but it's filled
filled now,
again.
yeah.
It's filled again now.
And I think we've had one kind of on and off.
Right, yeah, we added the one, I think, 3 years ago.
Right.
And then we added the second one in the current year budget, and now we're adding 100,000. But Sergio in Finance did present a report.
Exactly.
And Heather may want to speak just a little bit to it, Mayor, on the prioritization and what grants we've attached.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the grant writers work directly with the departments, and so they go through on a regular basis, talk to the departments about what needs they have, what opportunities there are. Then they go through and they do the research and they look. Grants go through funding cycles, and so not all grants are available all the time. And so there are multiple areas that you go to do that research. So there are posting boards, there's the different organizations that offer a lot of grants, and so they are constantly monitoring what those opportunities are. They share those opportunities with the departments and say, okay, animal shelter, there's an opportunity for a grant for $50,000 for this. Read through it and tell us, do you think that you would, do you have an opportunity for this? Is there a need for this? Do you meet the criteria? Then that comes back to the grant writers and they say, yes, we do, no, we don't. And then we move forward from there. So it's very much a collaboration between the grant writers and the departments based off of the department's needs, the department's priorities, and what's available during the current funding cycles.
Okay, so that said, I'm sure it is very difficult for one person to go through 29 departments. So I would imagine that right off the bat, they take 20, and I don't know, but I'm assuming they're going to say, well, let's mark this police. They're not necessarily going to go do grants for CCPD, so that gets kind of taken off. Right?
Not necessarily. I mean, they're looking across all the, like I said, I mean, they look at this on a daily basis, basically. What's out there to be able to be applied for? What are the needs that have been identified? And so, they're working with the departments constantly.
Okay, well, but it's one person. So I guess what I'm saying is there are departments that are in great need. And so I'd like to prioritize those where they're not, right now you're saying they're kind of all over going, well, let me look at this, let me look at that, let me see if this one's good. And I'm not saying maybe the process works, but if we prioritize out of 29 departments, which 5 are in the greatest need? And then they go look for maybe that to see what's available there that could help us.
So, Mayor, to add to what Heather's provided, so the way our grant writers work is we subscribe to a software that provides our grant writers with the opportunities. We're able to subscribe to specific programs. We're on the process of onboarding departments so they can get notifications of which programs are out there. So it's pretty much, we are working with all programs, and as Heather mentioned, depending on the availability of funding out there, we'll go after those grants, but some departments aren't, match has been an issue, or the program doesn't line up with what we're trying to do, the funds that are available at the time. There has been a large cut of federal funding recently, and so even though we're adding more folks, there are some programs that are no longer available. What I do want to share is we've applied for about $38.9 million this year. We've been awarded $35 million. We have 8.2 million of applications under review, and we have 30 million in process right now.
I would love for us to be able to see that information. If you can send it to us, that is great.
Yeah,
And
we
how about
present-
you?
we'll bring it
Where is
back.
that going? You know?
That was from your report that you gave we presented to council a few months ago.
Yes, sir, and this one's updated up through July, these
Perfect.
figures.
Yeah, we'll bring it forward again.
Why don't we do this regularly?
We can,
Give
yeah.
us these reports regularly so we
Sure
can see,
can.
this is great, this department got it. And I don't mean to cut anyone out, but Animal Care Services, I know there's so many grants out there, and I don't know, you know, maybe it's not my world. So I'm just trying to say, let's prioritize in some of the most needed departments. We appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am. And so we do subscribe, and Animal
Yeah.
Services is one that we are pushing to the department, and they're jumping on as quickly as
Okay.
possible.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And lastly, because we're on grants, you know, right now we have the GLO Commissioner, Dawn Buckingham, she's in town. And she, actually, there's a little check presentation I think she's giving to Nueces County. The city is receiving well over, I want to say it's 140 million, and it's flood mitigation is what they're doing. And across not only Nueces County, but it was very, very impressive. And so we're very grateful to the GLO, to Commissioner Dawn Buckingham. I kind of want to throw that out there. But I'm also curious to know, because the 40 million is going towards our wastewater treatment plant. So I'd like to know, how does that fit in, and what is it we're using those monies for?
Yeah, Nick, it's probably the CDBG MIT monies where we're putting in backup generators and,
Is that what it is?
yes.
Yeah, it's backup generators for our wastewater plant. And it's specifically Greenwood. It's focused on Greenwood. Yeah.
Greenwood.
Right, we applied for that through competition, and that gives us redundancy at Greenwood, which if there was a power outage, the plant would shut down.
Yes.
So this it's a pretty extensive project, right?
It is, and Camille reminded me that it also includes OSO, so it depends on how
Right.
far we
OSO.
can stretch
Right.
the dollar,
It's two.
but it's the two plants. So with any generators, there's a lot of engineering to design how to integrate that electrical backup too, but yeah.
Great. Thank you for those details. Okay. Councilman Scott.
Oh, geez, thanks. First of all, I'm starting to notice a lot of Kleenexes in the room, and at some point I'm leaving, Mayor. If there's, because I thought Jeff's just making it up, so we'll feel sorry for him, and I'm totally cool with that. But then I started looking around and then there's sniffles around me, man. What is going on? And here's the answer, by the way. It's because the weather's changing that our allergies are acting up, which means rain is on its way. So that's my positive thought for the day. I had two things. Oh, and Mayor, I just want to point out, it rained during my mayoral reign on Tuesday. So I just want to, it's kind of leader. Two things. One, you probably provided this before, and I might maybe be on the council. I'd like to see kind of the grand plan on North Beach as you come off that ramp and then turn around and come back to the Texas State Aquarium. Is there a map, or is there I'm just curious what that experience is going to be.
Yeah, there is one.
It's weird because you're going farther down North Beach, but on the other hand, if it's a pleasant, kind of a cool transition back to the Texas State Aquarium, that could be a benefit.
Yeah.
I just hadn't seen it.
All right, we can get you that.
Yeah, we do have that, Councilman.
Okay. And
And I'm kind of hoping you'll be able to actually do it here in the next few weeks.
all right, that's cool. Anyway, number two, if there is, I've been on councils that were criticized for not getting bond-approved projects done on time. So I want to be a voice that says, don't slow any of that down. I don't necessarily care whether you prioritize some one and some two and some three, but I think I want to be a voice that says we made a commitment to the taxpayers to get voter-approved bonds done, and I want those all to be prioritized and get done. Anyway, just want to be that voice. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes. Councilwoman Campos.
Thank you. Back to the grant. Thank you, Mayor, for mentioning about the grants and, wanting to have more information. But like one of the things that, since it's going to be a new position again, the homeless, and also, again, sidewalks. I think I brought this up before that somebody pointed out that there was grants for sidewalks, but if there's no one advocating that, to apply for homeless grants or to apply for sidewalk grants, so that's why, it would be nice for us to be able to prioritize and say, could you be looking out? But then I don't know who would be the one to follow through on that, right?
Right, yeah.
That would be the issue. because there's no one to oversee sidewalks, or where would it?
There is, yeah, so Ernie's in charge of the entire right-of-way,
Yeah.
public works, so Ernie
Okay.
would be the first point of contact, and then the grant writers and Sergio, who just spoke, would be second point of contact, but
But the homeless, where would that fall under?
that's going to fall under planning and community development,
Okay.
planning, community economic development, so that new position that we have in the proposed budget, that person would be the first point of contact.
Okay.
And then, the finance department and grant writers would be the second points.
Okay, so like, for example, the trestle, that was a
Right.
huge grant, and,
Yeah.
but where did that come from? Like, how did,
That came from us being aware of the issue on Flower Bluff. And
Yeah.
It actually started, though, from a grassroots effort.
right, that's what I
Community
thought.
leaders, right, so community leaders in Flower Bluff and the city partnered with each other and understood their desires with the trestle. We were aware of the grant. Dan McGinn actually applied for the grant.
Okay,
The Flower Bluff group, the community group, actually applied for some pre-grants that helped us do some pre-design work. And then Dan discovered this grant that was out there through the park system,
Okay.
and we applied. One thing we had to do, though, is budget about $1 million for engineering, for the design work. The grant covered all the construction,
okay.
but it took a little bit of time.
Yeah.
We identified money for the design, so.
So kudos
Yeah.
to the community for,
Absolutely.
initiating
Right.
this. And
we tell them that every time we go down there, because that's a well-organized group of individuals that advocate for their community.
Okay.
Yeah, it makes
All
a
right.
big difference.
Thank you, Peter.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilwoman Paxson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have just a quick comment. I think on the grants, I know that we are not necessarily that unique. I mean, municipalities all over the state face very similar issues, and that's why there's resources that can notify us as certain grant opportunities come up, and we can check for our, if we qualify for those or not, and then, of course, going through the department priorities. But I think two things that, in my experience, are very important elements to steering our grant initiatives are certain city initiatives like that we're doing, citywide, whether that's bike trails or trees, things like that. But I think another big part of that, kind of going into the efforts with the Flower Bluff Citizens Council is, I think each council member with their district has priorities, and working with the grant department helps push those through in addition to what they're sorting in each department. So unless things have changed, I think that's a pretty fair description of those efforts. But my questions, on page 308 and 309 in the CIP book, I know they're both referencing the Nueces County groundwater system program. I was curious, page 308 does designate funding this go-round. Page 309 does not, and that's more specifically relating to the pump station. In all of our discussions and planning for that resource, my understanding is we've already begun test wells. And so with the test wells in place and correct me if I'm wrong, the way I read this is helpful for that 250 acres that we bought. So if this is relating to that project and we're not securing funding in this fiscal year for that pump station and sort of things, long story short, is that going to delay our efforts where we're already getting into the ground with some test wells and things like that? On page 309, there's nothing in this budget. Page 308, for some initial stuff, there is.
Sure. So real quick, on page 309, what's called the Nueces River Wall Water Pump Station Piping and System Upgrades, that project is associated with the pumping station along the Nueces River, pumping water from there to Owen Stevens. So that's a project that's independent of any groundwater well project. The project on page 308, yes, that's our Nueces groundwater program. The funding and expenditures there, and you can see it includes the grant from the state. That is for the construction of primarily the western well field, so the property that we purchased earlier this year. So that would be the build-out of that well field, along with conveyance to the river, provided we obtain that second bed and banks permit. Now, recently, we started talking about opportunities for a brackish groundwater facility. That is not identified in this project page.
Okay.
Right, because it's been recently.
But this at least continues this project, and this prevents delays from accessing that.
Right, that's correct. Yeah, we'll continue that project. The delay, the gap on that page 309, the 26, that's because we're redesigning the project. So the 16 million that's in the prior years, that's active money being spent right now. We came to City Council recently to acquire some property to be able to kind of redirect the pipe that way instead of boring underground.
Okay.
And there was some challenges with one of the properties where it was undermining dirt around our important pipeline delivery system. So is that correct, Nick? So that gap is just to get caught up and continue to execute the 16 million. And by the time all the redesign work is done, the properties are acquired, then you'll do the installation work in those next 2 years.
Yeah, that's correct. So the project, because of adjacent properties and the complexity of that pipeline corridor, it was the most prudent decision to purchase additional properties, which we did with council approval this year. The design contract has also been awarded, so we need some time for further design to complete it and then construction.
Okay.
And it goes back to a little more detail and foresight we're looking into properly budgeting per year. We're taking a real close look on that.
Yeah, accurate. Okay, I appreciate those efforts, certainly. Thank you for that clarification. My next question, on page 311 of the CIP book, I see funding listed as in the prior year category, and I presume some of that has to do with those initial study contracts that we entered. But what I didn't see was funding this year, next year. Should they bring that? Because I would anticipate they're going to bring some findings to us in the near future. And so I was curious if we correlated with them on any kind of estimates or.
Right, so that was a professional services contract that was awarded to Garver Engineering. They are evaluating our reclaimed water and the best use for that water, and they're currently doing that work. We met with them recently. It also includes, basically, it's got a couple of priorities. First one is the quickest. Is there a good way to get water to the river to help supplement our flow or to other users? The other one is to further investigate aquifer storage and recovery. And then the third tactic they're looking at is direct potable reuse. Now, all of those will have different construction costs, different design fees. So this is a pre-engineering project so that all of us can make the right decision on how to proceed.
Was there, do we have a timeline on when they'd present back to us? I'm just, what I don't want to do is get us in a position where we have a result and then there's.
Right. Nick will answer that question. I want to add that we have a proposal that we're bringing to council on the 9th.
Is that accounted in here anyway?
That's not in here either, but that's a project where a local firm partnering with a state-enabled authority in the Houston area, Gulf Coast Authority, has a proposal for us on reusing all of the water from Oso and Greenwood and putting it into production. So,
do we have any type of a financial parameter at all from either of those projects?
We're meeting with them again today to review the final presentation, so we'll have to see. We didn't have it as of, do we have it unless? Yeah, we don't have it as of yet, but we'll see today if we can have them give us some type of range of what that would be.
Yeah, that way we have some kind of room to take some action, because I think that could be a fairly quick turnaround for some.
We agree,
water.
right.
So if we could add that in.
Right, and one of the pluses for this council on that project is that they would issue the debt, so it wouldn't appear in our capital budget. It would be, they have ability to issue government-rated debt.
On this new project,
right.
not the other, okay.
Yeah, so it wouldn't show up in the CIP anyway, it would be an operating expense.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that clarification. And then my last question, Jeff mentioned a boat ramp at Lake Corpus Christi, but I saw a little article that there was this week placed a temporary boat ramp specifically for shallow.
I saw that too. That was in the state park system. I don't know if
Yeah.
did you guys tracking that? I saw it myself, and like sometimes I'll learn things out in the media for the first time,
Yeah.
which is not good. But
That's fun.
That was actually a state park system. So the state put that in. It's a ramp to recognize the water's too low. You may have seen to the right was the other boat ramp that normally was used. So that is, I don't know if anybody here can speak to it.
My curiosity is, from what I can tell, is it's movable, so it can adjust to influxes and reductions in that water system. So my curiosity is if that potentially could translate into some savings in our forecasting here.
Yeah.
Well, as you can see, we push that back, right, to the current conditions, and then as part of your budget packet is an increase in some of the fees at Sunrise Beach that would eventually fund that project. And if that doesn't happen, then we would essentially continue to move that project out or
Are those
cancel
fee
the project.
increases
Yes.
supposed to start now, or?
For
They're up for consideration, and then they would project it start in January.
Can we,
October 1st.
well, can we evaluate that technology that was just installed this week and see if we
Yeah.
can delta there?
we can, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Councilman Roy.
Okay, a couple things. Peter, I was trying to remember years ago, right? And because this kind of goes hand in hand with the grant writers. Were we set up from a staffing hierarchy or whatever, as far as like all the accountants were linked together? Because right now it's departmentalized, right? But wasn't there a time when all the accountants had like a main accountant, and then if all the IT was, even though different departments had IT, there was a main IT person, right?
That's right. That's we refer to it as a shared services concept.
Yeah.
So that does exist in IT especially, where Peter Collins has brought all the IT people either in his department or he has some oversight if they're in another department.
And where I'm heading with this is that when you think about the grant writers, because what I'm curious about in terms of talking about a report card is that, number one, if in the hierarchy, I'd like to see who do grant writers report to right now?
They report to Sergio, the finance director.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think what's important, especially with grants, is that not only tracking the ones that we have been successful in, but also kind of understanding the ones that we weren't successful in, and just in terms of looking at an overall ratio. So for example, if we apply for 150 grants and we get 30 grants, kind of seeing if there's a significant reason, and I know sometimes with grants, we turn grants down because of the obligation that grant might put us under. We learned this with public health. And so just being able to understand that as a council to say, okay, yes, we had 130 grants, for example, we got 30. We had 20 that we turned down because it wouldn't have been advantageous for the city if we had to adopt a certain method or something. Sure. So that we can just get a better understanding on that. I think and then also making sure that even though all the grant writers may, one for police, one for fire, that they are communicating with each other and just in terms of best practices. I think that would be good. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the impact that the bridge has on coming down, the old bridge, the Harbor Bridge, when it starts that demolition period. And I know that that's been the challenge on North Beach and just other areas around, in the C District and that, trying to understand what the landscape's going to look like and how it's going to impact the infrastructure in those areas once that bridge does come down. Because I know that early on, at the beginning of the year, I think North Beach had 7 different requests, and we met with that community and said, okay, these are the priorities that they wanted. And so as we get further on in the year, where we're at, some of those things were pretty easy. but I think they were also tied into grants, like the signage at the historical near Pier 99. Was that a grant that,
So no, it was going to be TERS funding, and we're moving
was
forward.
TERS.
Yeah, exactly. So the historical plaza, we do have a project that we'll be bringing forward for the TERS board to consider. Parks and Rec is working on that, and we worked with the neighborhood association to identify those aspects they wanted. I think we're breaking it into a couple of phases, and so yeah, we're working on that.
and as far as the benches go, were we looking at grants to try to, I know that we've had several community groups talk about adding benches and certain things to our parks.
Again, so specifically on North Beach, we're working again with the community association to identify those aspects of things that they're looking for along the beach walk. That would be using either Parks and Rec funding or TERS funding. As far as across the park systems, we continue to look for opportunities within either our current budget, the park development budget, or for granting opportunities.
Yeah, I know nourishment's
Exactly.
also an important thing.
Yes.
That I know that there's grant monies out there for that.
Yeah.
So just thinking about that, I mean, it's pretty robust. I think we can save the city quite a bit of money if we put our efforts together and approach those things strategically.
And to point out exactly, in Parks and Rec actually just recently made an offer to a person for a grant writing position embedded within Parks and Rec. So we are continuing to identify those opportunities to have someone dedicated to that.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Councilman Hernandez, and then we're going to move on to the second presentation.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. One thing I forgot to ask about, under the water, raw water supply projects, I noticed Evangeline wasn't in there. Could you provide us the information so we can make an amendment to the CIP to add it?
We can, although the council, the next step on that would be in October to bring the contract to city council.
Okay, it's just a plan, right? This is a plan.
All these projects are funded that are in here.
Yeah, what I would
Go ahead,
propose,
Camille. Yeah.
I'm sorry. What I would propose, just to mention to Councilwoman Paxton's, the groundwater project has a long-range aspect of it as well, years 4 to 10. Those don't have identified funding, but it's a recognized project. We could add the Evangeline to that long range as a separate line, and once we get to the point that we want to commit, we'll then amend the budget to shift it from the long range to the short range, and then assign a funding source to it. So that would be a solution. So it's in the plan. It's not in the short range, just like the city manager said, because of we don't know the full costs and then the funding, but it's recognized in the plan, and it can be quickly shifted from just one action from the city council.
Right.
From long.
But it's not in the long-range plan either.
No, I'm proposing we could add it, which doesn't require an amendment. Then we can add it and bring it as an amendment for the second reading, because the first one was posted. We can add it that we're going to add this project to the long range.
Yeah.
You know, I'm hesitant to go with that recommendation because I think this is more of a shorter-term issue than a long-term issue, because long-term issue is beyond 3 years.
Yeah,
This is
what Camille's saying, Councilman, is it's not a council-approved project yet. And
Well,
once it becomes one in October, then we would amend it, but we would put it, it would be recognized in the CIP. The example that we can use is bond programs. When we put a bond program out, until the voters approve it, we keep it in the long-range plan, and then once it's approved, we move it into the first-year plan. So we
But
could,
what I'm saying, it's not even in the long-range plan.
I know, that's what we're saying, we'll put it in the long range.
Whether we decide to put it in the short range or long range,
Yeah.
we need information to put it in there.
Right.
So you could create a page or some information so we can include it, and the council will decide whether it's in the short or long range plan.
Sure.
Okay.
We can, that would be for the second reading, because the first reading was already posted, so we can't amend that unless you want to do it on the floor.
Well, I need the information. It's not
We'll
something
make the
you just put it
recommendation for next week, but we would recommend the long range because it's not approved yet. That contract, we just worked on it yesterday, in fact, and the plan is to bring the Evangeline contract for the water right purchase and land access at first week in October, in part because the appraisal that we asked for will be done then. It's a 45-day delivery on the appraisal.
Okay,
So
again, this is just a plan. right? It's,
No, the first year is a budget, and then every other year is a plan.
okay, so even if you put this in year 2, you could still
We can
have
put it in year 2.
a page for it. or
Okay.
Something along those lines.
We can put it in year 2.
Year 2 and year 3 are not part of the budget.
You're right, you're right. We just don't want to, we don't want to deviate from the strategy of the first year is a budget. Those are council-approved or voter-approved projects.
I understand.
But we can put it in the second year, and then you'll have a page for it.
Peter, I understand.
Yeah.
We did make a council motion to give you the authorization to go do the contract, so I think we did make an action for it. So I just want to have that information out there for public consumption.
No problem, we can do that.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to the overview of city debt profile.
Okay, and Victor Kyoga, our financial advisor, is going to present on this. Victor helps us with our debt plan and our bond programs and other financial matters of the city, so.
Honorable Mayor, members of council, Mr. Zanoni, thank you for having me here this morning. For the record, my name is Victor Quiroga with Specialized Public Finance, and we have the honor of representing the city as your financial advisors. Thank you. And I appreciate your patience with me here today. I have a big setup here, pretty intricate. One of my biggest fears, I've been doing this now 25 years, one of my biggest fears is maybe missing a highlight of a presentation or a big point that we wanted to address. The other fear is to put people to sleep because bonds aren't the most exciting things to talk about. The first 2 or 3 years of my marriage, my family and my in-laws thought I was in the jail bond business and not in the municipal bond business. So. But the sad thing is, over 25 years, I still haven't found a way how to make this funny, humorous presentation. So with that, I hear my job is to give you your information and where you stand with the city, what the future might look like. And so here today, I want to thank you for letting me present this information to you. The purpose of the presentation is to give you a clear picture of the city's debt obligations. We'll talk about the recent financings we conducted, the ratings of the city, and also talk about the planning framework, because here we're in a CIP budget. We're looking at this upcoming year and even future years. And so we'll talk about how all that fits into how much debt we could afford and how we fund these important projects for your community. And so the slides ahead, we'll talk about and review the how the city continues to benefit from a strong bond market reception, meaning there's willing buyers out there. We do have a very strong rating, both on your general obligation or property tax side and also your utility system revenue bond side. We'll talk about the favorable interest rates we got on that, and also how this all ties into not only issuing debt, but also refinancing debt, the savings to your taxpayers and utility system ratepayers based on how we've structured the debt and the opportunities you've taken. Equally important, as we were talking about the future, we're looking at how do we fit all these project needs and funding needs into our overall debt plan in order to stabilize the tax rate, which is the #1 goal whenever we're getting ready to issue debt for the city. Additionally, with respect to the utility system revenue bond side, what we're trying to do there is preserve the utility system debt coverage ratios that we have to abide to based off of our current bond covenants. And how do we not overextend ourselves now to the position where we can't afford future needs that will come up. And more importantly, anytime we conduct these financings, we want to always respect the economic life of the bond project that we're funding through debt. And then finally, we'll talk about at the very end the fiscal year 2026 funding needs that the staff had provided us, how that fits in into the long-term capacity and the protections in place you have currently for the city's taxpayers. Great. So I don't want to belabor this here, but when we had the honor of being hired by the city as your financial advisors, I was really excited. Not only, number one, to be associated with the city and be able to assist you with your financing needs, but the big reason was when we walked in, it was very unique. The city has a 10-year CIP plan that it maintains and updates every year. That is very unique, unfortunately, for many Texas municipalities. Even a 5-year plan is very difficult. So this is not only viewed favorably by me because there's a plan in place that we're looking to fund, and we have to monitor that in order to see how are we going to afford it. But it's also viewed favorably by bond investors and bond rating agencies. The rating agencies view this as a credit positive, meaning that the city is on top of its capital improvement needs. It's looking not only for the next year, which you're going to have to fund or looking to fund, but also 5 years, 10 years down the line. They also recognize that 10 years is a long way out, and so things change every year. So that's why you have these budget workshops each year to determine, based on the updated facts, are these still priority projects? Do they still cost the same? Do we need to adjust the costs and reprioritize other projects so that we could fit this in? So on the other side, there's some municipalities, I won't name names, but they don't have a capital improvement plan, not even for the next 5 years, which is unfortunate because a lot of times when you're like that, you are more in a reactive position, meaning that an emergency comes up, now we have to find money that we don't have right now to fund it and issue debt for it. So that's a credit negative. Rating agencies don't like to see that. So all to say that I think it's very commendable that the city has and maintains a 10-year CIP budget. Whether it's all funded or not, or whether it's funded with debt, cash, or grants, that's a determination that's made every year. So here, a lot of times, because you do have this capital improvement budget in place that's very long, unlike the other cities that don't have one and a big needs comes up and then they have to be reactive and issue debt and call us, and those aren't the best calls. Even though we're able to help them, it's not the best position we want to be in because it forces you to rush. It forces you to maybe accept terms that we could have gotten a little bit better from the bond investors. But many times, because you're dealing with the long-term capital improvement plan that you're maintaining each year and going out the next 10 years, a lot of times those projects, as you know, have been approved by the council to allow the city staff to start moving forward with procurement, with planning, design, et cetera. And even though you're starting the project, what's been wise practice of the city that's been commended by the rating agencies here in the last 3 to 4 years is that you're not actually issuing debt as soon as you're starting that project or you're authorizing the city staff to start that project. That's wise because you don't want to issue debt and start paying interest on monies that are just sitting there you're not using. You want to make sure you're being wise with that. So a lot of times the city is funding projects whenever we come up to you and to issue debt and get your approval to move forward with the financing. Sometimes those projects were maybe from last year or 2 years ago or even 3 years ago where we're just funding it to complete it. So again, just wanted to commend the city on that. So here, in total, it could take anywhere from 12 to 18 months by the time you initiate a project to the time you fund it, and sometimes even longer in some cases that we've experienced here. So this is a chart that I've presented to the council before. These are the 4 primary or most common debt financing tools allowed by the state of Texas. A city council can only do whatever the state of Texas allows us to do. And so these are the allowable financing tools that the state has. I know some are more popular than others and maybe not popular at all in general. So we have the general obligation bonds, or what we call general improvement bonds here at the city of Corpus Christi. This is where we first have to request taxpayer approval through a bond referendum to ask them to let us issue an amount of debt to cover a certain amount of projects. This one is going to be your most flexible tool. We use the interest and sinking fund tax rate to repay that debt. This type of financing tool will typically get the best interest rates and the best credit ratings from rating agencies. these. These are supported primarily, or the security mechanism that the bond investors have are going to be the city's authority and ability to collect property taxes from folks that are, or entities that are within the city limits. The other one is certificates of obligation, and don't run me out, just because I say that word, okay, but this one is very similar to general obligation bonds in that they get the same very favorable low interest rate. These have the same protections for the bond investor in that if you don't make payments, they could compel you to set an INS tax rate sufficient to repay that debt. Those interest rates are the same for general obligation bonds. Certificates of obligation, it depends on the city. Some people only issue certificates of obligation, and some maybe never issue certificates of obligation. It's just a city-by-city decision as to how you want to deploy these tools that you have in your toolbox to fund your projects and take care of these needs. I know here more recently the theme has been to try to limit the issuance of certificates of obligation, because although you still have to give notice to your taxpayers that you're going to issue that type of financing tool, under current state law we don't have to hold a bond election to do that, but it does allow your citizens to develop a petition to stop that certificate of obligation financing. In the past few years, the state legislature has been putting some limits with certificates of obligation. Before, we could issue certificates of obligation to fund an arena or to do an animal shelter, things like that. Pretty much anything that the city functions and provides those services, you could use certificates of obligation to fund those. Here, they've been restricting the use of certificates of obligation. They really want you to, if you do have to use certificates of obligation, which is still legal right now, they want you to focus on public safety or public works type projects, and they're not going to let you go build a new city hall. They'll let you renovate your existing city hall, but they're not going to let you go do an animal shelter with certificates of obligation or fund the arena or anything like that. So again, there's limitations already in place by state, and also these decisions are made by the council. The other tool are tax notes. Here, the limitation is that if you issue a tax note, you can't stretch your debt repayment past a 7-year term, and so there's state restrictions there that you have to pay that in a relatively short period of time. Because it's a relatively short repayment term, a lot of times when cities use this, it's going to be for smaller projects, maybe projects that have a shorter economic life, like vehicles and things like that. And also because if it's a 7-year term, those payments are going to be high, so you can't issue too much, or else you'll be experiencing increased debt payments automatically. The fourth one is revenue bonds, and these are for, typically where we issue them here is for your utility system to fund your capital improvement needs for your utility system, but you could also do sales tax revenue bonds. These are going to get the higher interest rates because that bond investor doesn't have the more secure protection of property taxes to repay that debt. So let's talk about the city's bond ratings. Here, this is a chart that we put together and provide to you and other clients to let you know where your current ratings are by the rating agencies that are reviewing the city, and based off of the general obligation debt that you have outstanding and also your utility system debt. Here, what this chart is showing is that you see that red dashed line on the chart to the right. We never want to go below that red dashed line. That's if you watch movies or read something and you hear the term junk bonds, that's what they're talking about. If you're below that, you're considered a junk bond, meaning that it's very risky for the investor to lend you that money, and if they do, it's going to be very high interest rates. Fortunately, the city is very, very far away from that position. And if you see the blue, if you go with me to the top, these are the 3 major rating agencies that currently review our bonds that are outstanding. If you see we have Standard & Poor's rating agency, Moody's, and Fitch ratings. These are all major credit rating agencies that municipalities use. The blue one there, that is the rating category that each rating agency places on us for that particular debt. So the blue one is for your general obligation obligation debt or debt that is secured by property taxes. I told you earlier that those get a better interest rate and they're viewed favorably by rating agencies. And the reason why is because there's nothing more secure for a bond investor than having that collateral or security mechanism of property taxes that the city has ability to collect on. The maroon color there right underneath there is your utility system bond rating. And the nice thing about here is that all three rating agencies view each of that debt category in the same. So Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch are all in the same level in that they view the city's credit rating for your general obligation debt at AA, or what Moody's calls AA2 and Fitch calls AA. So as you can see there, the top that you could get is a AAA rating. That's the safest, highest, best rating that a municipality can get. And just like when we're borrowing money to buy a car or get a mortgage, the bank is going to look at our own credit rating, and on a personal credit rating, they use numbers. Same thing with bond rating agencies, however, they use letters. And so the higher the credit rating that you have, the better for your taxpayers and ratepayers, because the lower interest rate that you're going to get whenever you need to borrow that money. The maroon side there, that's for utility system revenue bonds. That's one notch lower. That's at a AA minus, and that's for all three major rating agencies. So this is all to say that the rating agencies look very favorably on the city currently for your GO bonds and utility system bonds, and this is an independent third party. This isn't Victor, your financial advisor, saying that. These are all independent rating agencies, and these rating agencies are important because bond investors are looking to them to give them an independent view of the credit profile of the city based on the type of bonds that you're issuing. So again, the city's doing a very good job with its credit rating. They look at really four categories when they're looking at you. They're looking at the economy of the area, financial performance, management, and debt position. And basically, I try to summarize this by saying that the rating agencies base you and judge you on really two factors that you can't control. You can't control who's moving in, what industries are coming in. You can't control people leaving or coming in, residential developments. You really don't have too much control on that, if at all. So they're going to rate you on that. You can't, control the wealth ratios of the community here within the city of Corpus Christi. But then they also judge you on things that you can't control, and that is, are you being conservative in budgeting each year? Do you have a sufficient expenditure controls compared to other cities that are like you, not only here in the state of Texas, but you're judged and based off of other municipalities that are similar to you throughout the country. And so everything that the city has been able to control, the rating agencies have continued to highlight that and commend that to the city, saying that you have very strong management. The decisions that the city is doing are very prudent, and because of that, you've been rewarded by having a higher higher credit rating that'll give you a lower interest rate for your taxpayers. But overall, things that you can control, the city has been doing a great job managing that and being very prudent with taxpayers' money. So this is reflected here off the rating agency profile. So just a quick summary regarding the recent financings that you allowed us to pursue and conduct on your behalf during the current fiscal year 2025. We first went into the bond market June 26, 2025 for utility system revenue bonds. And that financing, we did two things with one financing. We borrowed $181 million in what we call new money, or these are new funds that you're going to utilize to address your improvement needs there for the utility system. We also took this opportunity to refinance $128.1 million of outstanding higher interest rate bond that you had out there, and that generated your ratepayers net interest cost savings of $8.2 million that you were able to deliver to your ratepayers that are going to be achieved over the next few years through the reduced interest cost payments. One thing that's unique, I don't get too much in the weeds here, but there's a mechanism I told you that we were at the AA- category. So what we investigated, we did a cost-benefit analysis for the city, because that's what we do as your financial advisor. We're trying to get you the best rate for your ratepayers and your taxpayers. So what we did is we applied for what we call bond insurance. Basically, this is where if I were going to go and borrow money, I was young and I want to borrow a car, but if I bring my parents with me to co-sign that, they're going to give me a better interest rate, right? And so similar thing here, but this is what we call this bond insurance or credit enhancement. So we were able to do that, and that actually let us issue your debt for your utility system, not with the AA- that we're naturally rated on by the rating agencies, but the AA. And again, the higher the credit rating, the lower the interest rate. So because of that mechanism that we're able to deploy and utilize here, we were able to save your ratepayers about $1.2 million in really foregone interest costs that you don't have to do because we got a better rate on that. I told you earlier that the rating agencies view City of Corpus Christi favorably, but this is also reflected by the bond investors. We were selling about close to $300 million in bonds. That was the new money project and also the refinancing opportunity. When we went out to the bond market, 53 institutional investors wanted to purchase the City of Corpus Christi's utility system revenue bonds, and we actually had fewer bonds than what we were able to get orders for through the underwriters. We got orders for $1.3 billion from investors for the $300 million that you were trying to sell. We view this, and that doesn't happen all the time to every city, we view this as a positive because there's bond investors out there that are wanting to make a bet, for lack of a better term, on the City of Corpus Christi because they see that they're going to get repaid their debt, and the decisions that the city has been making have been good, and they feel comfortable with lending you that money. That transaction closed July 17th. We also, on August 18th, we issued general obligation bonds. These were, in total, a little over $84 million in bonds, and we sold general obligation bonds. These are the voter-approved bonds that you have authorization to issue. Certificates of obligation, we sold some taxable certificates of obligation and also some tax notes. All of them came in under budget. We were budgeting about 5%. They came in about 4.39, 4.4%. So again, overall good news for the city. This one was also oversubscribed, and this was about 1.4 times oversubscribed. There were more orders than the bonds that we had available to offer the market, and this one is going to close on September 16th. No action is required by the city for that closing. So let's talk about how much debt we have, and a lot of times, even me, I've been doing this 25 years, and you see, oh, God, we're going to borrow $1 million or $100 million, and we've been fortunate, we've seen low and large amounts, but it's all a matter of perspective. Even, like I said, I've been doing this 25 years, and we've been helping many cities throughout the state of Texas, and some have issued, $500 million at once, and some have issued $500,000 all at once, and to me, it's all the same because it's all relative. A small city is only able to afford $500,000, but a large city may afford $500,000. But at the end of the day, it's all the same. It's all relative. So we always respect that and make sure that you're feeling comfortable and you're in a good position to continue funding your bond programs and your capital improvement needs. So the debt that's secured by your property taxes, currently the outstanding balance as of the end of this fiscal year, and it includes the recently sold bonds that we conducted for you earlier this month, we have an outstanding principal balance of $578,590,000 currently at the end of the fiscal year. That's how much we owe bond investors on a per capita basis. That's about $1,221 per citizen that's paying property taxes, and that's or per population that you have here within the city. Regarding the utility system, these numbers are higher because the utility system is going to be more capital sensitive, meaning you need to invest this costly infrastructure to provide the services that you're continuing to provide to your ratepayers. Here, these bonds, we have a total principal amount at the end of this fiscal year of $1.45 billion. If you look at it on a per capita basis, that's $4,575 on a per capita basis. But I put 2 asterisks there because as you know, you're a regional provider of water, and so your services and revenues that you bring in for that service extend beyond the city limits of the city of Corpus Christi. So I just want to put that asterisk. The rating agencies, they're not really looking at that $4,075 $100 per capita debt. They're looking at your overall scope and the overall services and the number of ratepayers that you have out there in the multi-county service area that you have, which is about 500,000 people, more than the 317 here in the state. So what this does not include are the voter authorized bonds that the voters gave us authority to issue on their behalf from 2022 and 2024. So those are not included there yet because we have not issued that debt yet. So a little bit more detail here for your property tax or GO supported debt. We have 37 bond issues outstanding. The principal amount, as I indicated earlier, was a little over $578 million. The final repayment term or payment date is 2045 for the property tax debt. The city has been very prudent. You've limited your repayment term on any property tax supported debt to no more than 20 years. And so this puts you in a good position in that you're putting future councils and future staff folks in a good position to be able to afford bonds because you're paying these bonds off earlier than what is typical. Many cities and municipalities will go up to 25, even 30 years and extending that because they want to reduce maybe the tax rate or they want to reduce the payment, but you're not letting future councils be able to conduct the needs and finance the needs that they have. So here the blue in each bar, that's your principal payment that's structured. The yellow is the interest rate or interest cost that's scheduled based off of the debt that you have outstanding. All the debt that we've issued in the past here at the city have been fixed interest rates, and so these aren't variable interest rates. It's not going to change. The only time the payment structure changes or that rate changes is if you decide as a city to maybe utilize extra cash to pay off bonds early, or if you conduct a refinancing like we've done in the past for the city. This is just a look here at your annual debt service payments. This is your principal and interest payments per year on a fiscal year basis. So for this upcoming year, fiscal year 2026, the payment that we have due is a little over $65.2 million. So that amount where that revenue is going to come from to make that payment to those bond investors is going to be your interest in seeking fund tax rate or your debt service tax rate. But you could see there it rolls off every year as you move on. You're going to be paying off debt, and you're going to allow yourself and other councils the opportunity to fill those gaps in with future needs if you need to address those through a bond issuance. On the utility system revenue side, here we have 21 debt obligations outstanding. We have a principal balance of $1.45 billion. Here with the utility system, because the needs have been greater than the GO side, here the strategy has been to amortize or set up repayment schedules for your utility system revenue bonds over a 30-year basis. And the reason why is because we're trying to still make the rates affordable. We're trying to meet the covenants that we have with the bond investors out there and the limits that we have for us to be able to issue additional debt. So here, the debt repayment and final payment is going to be $2,055. This is a little smaller here, so I'm glad you have it in front of you too, but this is over the 30 years what the average annual or the annual debt service will be. This is your principal and interest for this upcoming year. We have principal and interest payment due for the utility system revenue bonds of $103 million. And it's going to be a little stable there for a little while, and then it starts dropping off again as you're paying off outstanding debt as well. These are also fixed interest rates. So let's talk about the property tax. If you're still with me, I haven't seen anybody asleep yet, so that's good. Yeah, I'm feeling good now. But here, whenever we're planning, and again, we're looking at a 10-year CIP, we're looking at asking voters for general obligation debt to fund streets or whatever projects they allow you to do. It's not something that's just presented to the voters based off of, this is what these projects are, these are what we think we need, this is how much we think they're going to cost. This is all part of this overall long-term comprehensive debt planning that we assist the city with. And so one of the things that we look at, particularly for bonds that that are going to be paid by the property taxpayers through either GO or COs or tax notes is that payment is going to be based off of what the property values that you have within the city to repay that debt, or what we call taxable property values. As you can see there, I'm glad I have it here because it's a little small. This is going back to fiscal year 2017, and each year has been different just based off of what the appraisal district has set those values. Of course, the city council has no control on those property values or what you have here. And so you can see there we had some pretty healthy growth, and in 2022 to 2024, here at the city of Corpus Christi and also many municipalities throughout the state, appraisal values jumped because of the economy. People are wanting to move to Texas and made real estate very valuable. Unfortunately, this current year that we're in, fiscal year 2025, we actually realized an actual reduction in the amount of property value that you have to work with here as a city. And so that went down slightly. Some of it was because of maybe the appraisals, didn't go up as high as they normally do. But a lot of it here, to be honest, is because of additional reductions that you gave property taxpayers within the city. You increased the homestead exemptions and everything, which is good for the taxpayer, but then when you're working on a budget, that just means you have limited resources and revenues to work with, so then you have to make these tough decisions. What are we going to cut in the budget, and are we still able to afford our debt? Right now, based off of these projections here and the reduction in values that you achieved this year, we're still in a good position. We're still able to afford your property tax supported debt. But we're very conservative when we're planning this and developing a plan for you in the long term, in that although on the last 10 years, you can see here on the average annual basis, we grew about 5.2% per year on your property values. Last 5 years is 6.29%, so a little bit higher growth, even though we did have that reduction last year. This year, good news is that you all didn't go down, you actually went up by about 2%. So we always like to see that increase, because that impacts what rate we have to set to be able to pay the bond investors their principal and interest payment back. But you can see there in the blue, that is the projections that we're using in our current bond affordability or bond capacity models to be able to afford these voter-approved bonds. You can see there that we're purposely using a lower estimate, and we do that on purpose because we want to be conservative. The last thing we want our clients to do is to overpromise and underdeliver on their bond projects. And so one of the main factors is, can we afford those bonds, and when are we going to have those funds available to continue these projects. So you can see there, moving forward, our models for the next 3 years is showing a 2% property value increase. After that, it's 1%, and after 2035, it's going to be 0%. We do that on purpose, again, because we want to be conservative in us telling you how much you could afford and when. So this leads into the property tax rate. The area that I'm delving into more is going to be the interest and sinking fund tax rate. That those taxes within that bucket can only be used for the repayment of outstanding debt that you have, and the maintenance operation there is just to run your operations of the city. So here, the total tax rate that's being proposed, as you know, is going to be the same as the current year and the same as the previous year at 59.98 cents per $100 valuation. The 22 cents that's identified there under the interest and sinking fund tax rate or debt service tax rate, that's the rate that has been stable, and on purpose the city has wanting to keep that stable, not been wanting to increase it to afford these new debt issuances to pay for your capital improvement needs. So the bond elections, whenever the city has gone for bond programs, it's indicated that it's a no tax rate increase. This is what you're talking about there. The goal is to keep the INS tax rate at 22 cents and be able to afford your existing debt and new debt. Of course, like I said earlier, you have no control as to what the property value is going to be set at by the appraisal district, and so that component could change. The bottom graph is just a look at your last 5 years of tax rate. You've been able to reduce the tax rate for the community by about 5 cents to cover your operations and also your debt. And so overall, the rating agencies look very favorable, very favorable on this. I think I've been talking too much. I'm already stuttering. But here, just to give you a glimpse into one-page information regarding the additional savings that you provided, your your taxpayers, particularly your homeowners, is that for this current year, what you were working with and why the property value decreased from the previous year by about 5% is that you increased your homestead exemption from 10% to up to 20%, so you doubled that. So that was really the largest factor why those values went down that you're working with. You increased the over 65 homestead exemption from $50,000 to $62,500. Then you also made a change to the disabled person exemption from $50,000 to $62,500. All the other areas were not changed, and those are still in effect currently. So regarding the bond programs, we're still working on the November 2022 and 2024 bond programs with respect to the financing. A lot of these projects may have already been started, but as I said earlier, we don't want to issue debt and pay on interest on money that we're not using and deploying. So this has been another strategy that the city has been working with. Currently, for the 2022 bond program that the voters allowed you to move forward with, they let you borrow on their behalf $125 million to cover the projects within the 4 propositions that you offered there that's listed there. Currently, we've accessed to date $80 million of that $125,000 authorization, and what remains is $45 million that is what we call authorized but unissued. We haven't tapped that money just yet to pay for the projects. In 2024, the city again, based off of its 2-year cycle, addressed the voters and asked for $175 million to address projects, park recreation, public safety, and library. One thing I want to commend is it really stands out to me in representing other municipalities is that the approval rate was really high there. Whenever you're going above 60%, that means that obviously the taxpayers are okay with you issuing debt for these projects. They're popular projects and that the city can deliver. Of this bond authorization that we received recently of $175 million, we have not accessed any of that funding yet, but that's not to say, as was described to you earlier in the previous presentation, that those projects have not started just yet. We're just trying to be strategic and not issue debt and pay interest on money that we're not using. And so going towards next year, and the information provided to us by city staff is that they believe, based off of their project estimates, that the general obligation bonds, these are the voter approved bonds, that they will likely need about $75 million in the authorization that we have outstanding. And also certificates obligation, but these are likely going to be for 2 reasons. Number one, from my understanding, is going to be for some cost overruns on some street projects, and then the other purpose, primary purpose, is going to be for the solid waste area, because we're funding that through debt issuances for their infrastructure. The other component is going to be tax notes potentially of $2.7 million, and my understanding that's for developer repayments or reimbursements that you've committed to. And also currently, the approximate amount that the city is looking to borrow for the utility system is about $230 million. Again, these aren't set in stone yet. It's going to depend on the projects, where they are in terms of the timeline. When I come back to you next fiscal year to see if we really need this much, do we need more? And so that determination will be made by you in the next few months. So just some of the overall fundamental components in our debt planning that we work hand in hand with city staff, and they're always great to work with and very responsive, is that we never want to issue debt and have that debt life out longer than what we're actually funding. We don't want to issue a 30-year bond for a vehicle that's going to last us 5 years. So we always keep that in mind whenever we're structuring this for you. As your financial advisors, as indicated earlier, we're using conservative tax and revenue projections. We're not going to say that, oh, you could afford this because you're going to grow 10% per year on your property values, which that's not the case. We review the capacity and sensitivity analysis. We have to be very mindful of that, because in order to issue additional debt, we have to confirm with the existing bondholders that we could afford this debt, and we're not going to put their repayment at risk. Again, the goal of the city has been to keep the INS tax rate stable at 22 cents per 100 evaluation to be able to afford your voter-approved projects. The utility system, we look at debt service coverage ratios and reserves. We make sure that before you issue that debt, that you're able to afford it for the long term. And of course, what we've done here recently is that we've been able to pursue refunding opportunities whenever the market allows in order to reduce those interest costs for your taxpayers and your ratepayers. This one I'm not a big fan of because, all this is saying is that these are the top 8 cities and this is your population. And really, it's very hard from a rating agency perspective or from a bond investor perspective to be able to judge different cities. And it's never an apples to apples comparison. All cities are different. Some cities maybe have a lot of deferred maintenance that, wasn't addressed previously, and now they have to fund it, or the current council has to fund it through debt issuances, and so it might skew the numbers a little bit. Maybe other cities that have been issuing debt early on and addressing those capital infrastructure needs so that they're not issuing as much debt and they've already addressed it. But here, this is a look at the top 10 cities based off of the population of those cities, and also we're showing here the property valuation that's in the middle of the top chart there. You can see the valuation for the city of Houston. It's a larger city, a little larger area. They're working with property valuation for the M&O and INS tax rate of about $325 billion. We're working with $31 billion or $30 billion with property value. So again, it's all relative, and it's just we have to work with what we have. The next column is the debt outstanding that we shared with you earlier, and then the right side is the ratings that each city has. Again, no city is exactly alike, and so these are going to vary as well. But on a debt per capita basis, if you wanted to compare yourself against the other 7 larger cities, we're about the middle. It's still pretty manageable. It's, as I indicated earlier, $1,821. So this is, again, just to show that, overall the city's doing a good job and being prudent with your debt management, and are in a fine position to continue issuing debt if you wanted to address some of the projects that you consider are a priority. And I'm going to end with this, and I'm so sure people are glad that I'm at the final slide here, but just want to end with this because I think a lot of times in my industry, I'm in a tough industry. I have to deal with the word debt, and I have to deal with the word taxes, and those, especially in Texas, are not very popular. But that's not to say that they're bad or evil or anything like that. It's just, you have to address some of these capital improvement needs for your ratepayers or for your constituents to provide them streets, provide them water, what have you. But as I indicated here, and this is not just coming from Victor, your financial advisor, but bond rating agencies and then bond investors as well who are wanting to lend you that money, the city has been doing a good job in its debt management. Of course, a lot of these numbers, $1.4 billion sounds a lot for your utility system, $500 million sounds a lot for your property taxes, but again, it's all relative. It's all based on what we're working with in terms of that revenue source that you have, whether it's the utility system or your property taxes. But the city has been very prudent with its debt management. In the last 10 years, has conducted 8 financings on your GO side. These are property tax debt. You've saved your taxpayers about $25 million. On the utility side, we have more debt out there, and we've conducted additional refinancings, and your ratepayers have seen through the city's actions, council and staff, interest cost savings to your taxpayers of about $111 million. But I guess those are the closing things that I want to relate to you. I just wanted to hear, my job is to give you all the facts about where we stand right now, where we're going to go in the near term, and where we're going to go in the long term. So the city, again, is in a very good position, and that was a lot of it, but probably a mouthful there. So, but I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Victor. Very good presentation. We appreciate it. Councilman Roy.
Yes.
Oh.
Thank you for your presentation. So I want to go back and I want to look at the slide on page 35, which is basically your security mechanism, and it talks about property taxes under the general obligation utility system. And this kind of stems from a conversation I had at our last town hall meeting last week, and there was a question that was brought up to me, and so I wanted to kind of discuss this. When you take a look at Corpus Christi as a whole, I think we are a unique city because of the fact that we have these IDA agreements, right?
Yes.
And you look at other cities like Beaumont, Houston, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think historically IDA agreements I don't want to say that they started in Texas, but I know that a lot of states really don't have these IDA agreements, right?
Yeah, each state is different because some states, have income tax as a revenue source for municipalities, and so we don't, and so, yeah, each state is different, but I'm not sure exactly on the genesis of the IDAs, but we certainly have one here.
So with that, what I was thinking about is that when you take a look at S&P, Moody's, and Fitch in terms of how they look at our city in terms of strengths and weaknesses, and I was in this conversation with a citizen talking about our 15-year IDA agreements as far as the term goes. Do you believe that does that have an impact in terms of how our credit's viewed with the IDA agreements? Is it significant? Does it play a role in that at all? Positive, negative? I just want your opinion on that.
Yeah, you probably saw me smiling on this side because I was smiling at, thought it was a humorous question, but that would make me very excited as your bond financial advisor, because if those IDAs were swallowed and being part of your boundaries, then for me as your financial advisors, we're structuring your debt, well, maybe we could afford even more capital improvements keeping that tax rate the same, or maybe we could even reduce that tax rate and still take advantage of those property values that are there. However, that's just a very selfish viewpoint from my side, because you'll be able to afford more because now you have more property revenues that you're going to be collecting on. From a rating agency side, they might view that as a positive because now you're, in their eyes, wealthier in terms of the city. And then bond investors too will look at that. Of course, I can't speak for the staff in that, if you do take those in, now you're required to provide services to them.
Right.
As well, so you have to factor that in on the M&O side. I'm only on the INS side, so that's a very selfish view. Thank you. But I think it would be a credit positive for the rating agency, bond investors, and Victor if those were in the city limits.
Yeah. So what I was thinking is that when they come out with these ratings, I was wondering, do you get an actual summary in terms of key points that they feel went into why they rated us a certain way? And I just wondered if that topic ever came up in terms of...
Absolutely, yeah. So fortunately, my presentation was long enough. I don't want to really do away with my job and provide you those actual rating reports. Obviously, you can have access to this public information, but in each of those rating information or rating reports, I joke around that, if you have trouble sleeping at night, you might want to pull up a rating agency credit report because that'll put you to sleep real quick. And so there, they identify things and they even talk about things that the city is dealing with and trying to manage, and that's your IDA agreements. And so I know this past year was a big year where we had to renegotiate those and come to new terms. And so the rating agencies take that all into account because you are still getting those pilot payments coming into the city. So that's all a factor of the revenue that they have to measure and conduct. So yes, sir, that's a long way of saying that they do take into account the IDAs, and they do mention that on the rating reports. Yeah,
because the other thing is, I was thinking, because they were basically challenging in terms of the term, but if we have a 15-year term and we're sitting there, that's 15 years of I guess maybe I'll use the word stability in terms of we know that is in place for 15 years. Yeah. So I just kind of wondered how that came into looking at, because that definitely is part of a security mechanism that we have that other cities in Texas, because we're always comparing ourselves. How is Corpus Christi related to whatever, Austin or Midland, Odessa, or Amarillo, whatever, Lubbock. And so I thought about that, and thanks for your feedback. The other thing, this is an observation. This doesn't really have anything to do with your presentation, but it does in the terms of when you take a look at what, when we go out for these bonds, and you look at the voters, because the voters have the opportunity, and you said that anything over 60% is generally pretty favorable. Because I know that recently we've had a lot of dialogue in terms of what the people want or what they respect and what they don't want. And I thought it was interesting. I just want to highlight this, that when you take a look at the last bond and even the bond before that public safety ranks the highest at 74%. So that tells me, if I'm looking at this right, that the people are definitely behind our public safety initiatives and the officers and fire department and things of that nature. And at the same time, roads. Roads are significant, but they didn't score as high as that. And I just wanted to note that for everybody, because I think that topic's been coming up at council a lot lately. So that's it. Thank you for your presentation, and that's all I had.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Campos.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, thank you, Councilman Everett, for bringing that up about the IDAs and how it does impact our bonds and our overall picture, for the city. So just speaking, I wasn't going to mention that, but I'm glad that he brought that up. So again, Victor, you did say that if these corporations were part of the city, being the value that they are, that it would actually bring even additional tax revenue to the city.
I feel I'm being put in a position.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not, but just looking at it,
So,
you're not.
Looking at it from just from financials, because we deal financial, we deal with the statement and everything. And so
because
if I was a bond investor or rating agency, and I'm going to try to dance around this as best as I can. If I was a bond rating agency or investor, and I'm thinking about, and I live in New York, California, wherever, not in Texas, and if I was looking at this investment opportunity that's presented in front of me, and I see that the property valuation that the city has to work with is higher than what it was before, whether it's because IDAs or for a corporation coming in, that's going to be looked more favorably by the rating agencies. That is not endorsement from Spiffy or Specialized Public Finance or Victor about whether you should have IDAs inside or not. That's out of my realm of expertise. But the more values you have within the city, the more you could afford, and maybe the more tax rate you could reduce.
And that's the basics. It's about the more properties that you have in your city and that you can evaluate and count, that it would naturally bring in more taxes into our city. So that's basic. Okay, so.
And just on that note, just real quick, just to have some levity here, I think I don't want to open my email box when I get back to the office, because maybe industry is going to, have all the complaints about me. But no, that's just, we're just looking at this on a black and white.
It's overall. Yeah, no, I think it's natural. It's just basic knowledge. That's all. Basic. Okay, so. The other thing that I wanted to just say was on the bonds. I guess like investing in sidewalks, wouldn't it actually increase the value of the property? So, again, okay.
You're asking
again, the same thing. Yeah. Because I guess that's out of your purview. But again, that's what I'm thinking, that if you, sidewalks are built around, because you're investing in the homestead, that it would naturally also increase the value of the property. Just I wanted to throw that out there. I'm sorry, Victor, you're the one that's there, but.
I'm a financial advisor, not a political consultant, so don't look to me at that. I'd be pretty bad at that.
Yeah, no, okay, so back onto the, I did want to mention, have you been tracking Senate Bill 10?
Is this the 1%? Yeah, it's.
Has it, I don't know, has it passed or not? No, not still.
I think that the chances are looking extremely high that that's going to go through.
Yeah.
And that limits your future revenue growth.
Exactly. Yeah, you didn't mention that, but I guess, you can't because it's not a certain thing.
Yeah, well, I didn't focus on that because it's not quite fun, but that's going to be more impactful on your maintenance and operations side, that in your general fund side, you're going to be limited as to how much revenue you could increase each year. And to me, just because, obviously I'm advocating for municipalities, is that it's a tough bill because that is a lower bar and it's even lower than what the natural inflation rate is going to be each year, because there's, one thing that we can't stop on the finance side is inflation. Whether it's high or low, inflation is always going to continue. And so that's just my kind of 2 cents on that. But that's going to be more impactful on your maintenance and operations side and less so on your interest and sinking side, the side that I care about, because that's what you use, to repay your debt.
Yeah, I find it very difficult. I keep, I was asking Ryan, where's the mentality on that? To introduce a bill that would reduce it so significantly. And like you say, it is basic knowledge that, prices go up and we have to be able to maintain our streets and our infrastructure. So it's very difficult to accept what's going to happen. But in order to make that kind of bill up, it would have to come back down to probably, I guess, increasing, rates, water, because we own, the water, or I'm just trying to figure out where we would get the money. I mean, well, I guess the water would just be for the water, but fees, I guess, I don't know. I'm just like, it's difficult to comprehend, so I'm trying to figure out where we would actually get the money, so, okay. Oh, and I don't know if the public does know about Senate Bill 10. Do you?
I'm not an expert.
All right.
I'll let the city staff.
There's been news stories on it, so we're aware of it. And Heather was in Austin recently following the council's legislative priority that says, don't impact our ability to levy revenues. So, but it does look like it's going to pass. It's going back to the Senate, I think, for an amendment on excluding public safety in that calculation. And we're going to have to probably reduce the budget, as there is no, it's really not, we can't overfee people to balance the budget, so it'll be a matter of reducing expenditures, because 1% growth is pretty slim.
And because it's happening right now, and we've been discussing the budget, I'm just putting it out there into the public that if there's any way that they can call their officials and, support and against this, please do. Thanks.
Councilman Hernandez.
Thank you, Mayor. On page 35, you kind of talk about the outstanding debt, but you only talk about principal.
Correct. Yes, sir.
But you have a couple of slides, 37 and 39, that add in the total interest as well. So we went from, and I'll go back to from the end of last year, we, according to brb.texas.gov, we had outstanding principal total revenue bonds and general obligation bonds of $1.65 billion, with interest of $841 million, for a total of $2.5 billion with regards to what the city owes. And this year, we went from to a total principal of $2 billion, and interest of $1.1 billion, for a total of $3.1 billion that we owe on a per capita basis. That would be $9,917 per capita, just based on what you provided us in the information. Yeah. Okay, so in 1 year, we've increased our principal by $350 million, and our total money that we owe by $600 million. Is that correct?
Yes, that's on the individual slides. That's the most important information. Yeah, so your figures are tracking to the information we provided.
So you also had an amount here that was excluded based on the solid waste information on the per capita, but I'm assuming I added that back in when I looked at the total debt. How much is too much debt?
I look at it from bond rate, and let me step back here real quick, because what these metrics that we're showing, and it's not like, oh, we want to show a more favorable side. That's not what we're doing. We're showing you what is industry standard with these ratios here on a per capita basis. Whenever we're talking to rating agencies and bond investors, the ratios that they use, and this is just one of 100 ratios that they use when they're analyzing whether to rate you or invest in the city. This is just one of the factors there, using a per capita on a debt basis. But what is standard for rating agencies and investors to use is on a per capita based off of the principal amount that you have outstanding, because that principal amount is not going to change. Once you borrow that money for that principal amount that you borrowed, in this case, property taxes, it's about $578 million. Yes, we do have interest to factor in when we're setting the tax rate, and that's why we listed that here, and so we want to be transparent as possible. The ratios that we're presenting to you here, it's not because we're trying to make the city look favorable, it's because these are standard industry ratios that we're looking at. So that's number one. Number two is, although the principal amount that you borrow, that's never going to change and you have to pay it back or else you'll be in default. What does change here, if you look at the interest column, although it's fixed in that we got a fixed interest rate for the city, and if you do nothing with your debt, don't issue anymore, don't pay any of these bonds off early, don't refinance, that interest column is not going to change because we have fixed interest rates. So that's good in the stability and you'll be able to plan for it. But it could change, like it's changed here recently whenever we try to refinance bonds, it could go down like we've demonstrated with the utility system. It's gone down about $100 million. So that's why the rating agencies and bond investors, they don't focus on the overall debt. They know that you owe $578 million in principal. They know you have interest of $500 million, and the overall is going to be principal and interest. So they know that. So what we're trying to show here is just industry standards of how we view this debt. Of course, there's state information that you have the principal and interest out there, and they factor that in. So that, so I just wanted to clarify that what I'm showing you here is industry standard, and it's not a sales pitch to make the city look in a better position. Rating agencies, bond investors, they know that you owe principal and interest. What they're rating you on is what kind of decisions as a city council, city staff, how are they managing it to be able to repay the principal and interest over that time. You asked about what's a good amount of debt. Well, I'm pretty concerned with my personal finances, and so that's I'm kind of skewed in that way. Nobody is a big fan of debt, but when you talk about how much is too much debt, some people have different opinions. I'm sure if you were to ask each individual councilperson what that figure is, everybody's going to come up with a different figure. And so what we look at here with the rating agencies, and when they look at all this, how much you have a debt outstanding, when you're going to pay it back, how quickly, how long, they're rating you on similar sized cities. So there's not a clear numerical number that I could give you about what's too much debt. What we could do is these rating agencies view the city of Corpus Christi at a high rating category, at the AA. That's a phenomenal rate. You could go into the market like we demonstrated, and you could get a good interest rate and buy a lot of buyers. So when they come up with that rate, they're looking at similar sized cities throughout the country, and the ones that are maybe AA minus, they're probably like that because maybe they have more property values they're working with, maybe they have a lower debt profile. So the amount of debt is not a one individual indicator about where your rating is going to stand, because these rating agencies, when they're viewing you on a comprehensive basis, they are also looking at, are you addressing your capital improvement needs, or are you making a decision as a city to defer and delay these project needs? And so a lot of times, even though you might have a lower debt amount as a city because you haven't issued as much debt, that's telling the rating agencies, based off of the other information that you look, well, why haven't you addressed your facility needs? 5 years ago, it would have cost you $20 million. If you continue to wait because you don't like debt, which is fine, it's going to cost you now $40 million. And so those are all the kind of, what I'm trying to say is that there's different levels. There's a balancing that you have to do as a city about what projects are important to us, how much do they cost now. If they're important to us now, are they still going to be important to us 10 years from now? And if we don't like debt and don't want to issue debt until 10 years now, it's going to cost you more. So you just have to factor that in. And so the rating agencies, bond investors, they look at everything. So that's a very, very, very long way of saying that I can't give you a number. What we could say is that if you wanted to go up to the AA plus category, and you could work on things that you can control, and maybe one of those is the debt per capita, well, what do those cities, what's their debt capita, so we could try to get there. But I just want to emphasize that it's not one ratio, it's not one decision that the council does to want to focus on. These rating agencies, they look at you as a whole, like we talked about earlier. They look at the fact of, how much of the revenue coming in from IDAs. And so, I can't give you an answer, but I could tell you this now is that the rating agencies view you as highly rated, very safe, and they look at all the debts that you have outstanding, principal and interest, and they're still affirming your credit rating at that level. And as demonstrated, we're still able to find more buyers than needed to lend you that money so you can address your needs. But, you know, if you look at your debt ratio and you want to reduce it, well, again, that's fine, but you're making a
let me
separate
rephrase
decision.
that, Victor, because you went on to a long spiel on this.
I have a habit of.
So what's what's an upper limit of debt here? I mean, should we go to $6 billion in debt, $10 billion?
No.
What is your recommendation as to a good limit as to how much debt as a city, based on our revenues, based on the amount of, per capita we have, how much we have assigned, how much debt? What is the ceiling for you that would say, hey, Corpus Christi, maybe that's too much?
You see, and I'm trying to be as diplomatic as possible.
You don't have to be diplomatic.
No,
be blunt.
Yeah, no, you're my boss.
Be blunt.
I am blunt, transparent, but I'm trying to make it seem like I'm being nice.
You don't have to be nice. Get it to us straight.
No. There's not a number out there because, as I indicated earlier, when you view and compare yourself to the top 10 cities out there, it's not really a good, fair comparison because each city is in a different position.
I'm not asking you to compare.
But they're
just
okay.
saying
So
for us, based on what information you have from us.
I think in the current deposition you have, the planning numbers that we're looking at in terms of how much you could afford, whether it's the utility side, your property tax side, everything is still manageable. I'm the first one that's going to tell my clients you're over leveraging yourself because I don't want you to get reduction in your credit rating, and I know that you're going to have future needs, and so don't put everything all here at once in the debt because 5 years from now when other needs come up, you're going to have to address it. But there's not a figure that I could give you, and I don't think anybody.
Is there a percentage?
Victor, I hear where you're going. I hear where you're going.
Give us something.
We hear where you're going. Victor, first of all, I don't know that you can actually answer that question, and I understand your position. But the councilman's point is, where are we? Are we nearing that leverage point? Like, where are we? Let's just say it's a scale from, I don't know, 1 to 5, where you would, like you just said, you would tell a client, I would never tell them to, whatever your statement just was, if you were getting close to that. He's trying to find out, where are we in terms of getting close to that? Like,
yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just dancing too much and talking too much. But
you're tap dancing really well.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at it. Yeah, I've heard. So I get asked this a lot, not just by the city of Corpus Christi, but other clients. Like, what is affordable? How much capacity do we have? So. And I've been doing this a little while already. At that part, I already have an answer for. When you talk about debt capacity, how much can you afford? There's the legal capacity that you have based off of what the state of Texas says. You can't exceed your tax rate to repay that debt. So we have a legal capacity. And then you also have, which is not my realm of expertise, obviously, is the political capacity. You're the ones that are going to go to your voters and say, hey, we want to borrow $100 million for X, Y, and Z. We could afford it, and the tax rate would be manageable, but that's more of a political decision. In terms of legal capacity, if you look at the tax rate here, we're on page 41. The INS tax rate is 22 cents. Your M&O tax rate is close to 38 cents. Under the state of Texas, we are not even close to the capacity level that you're allowed legally to set to be able to repay your debt. So from my position here, you're
right there. I want you to stop right there.
Yes.
Okay, so based on that 41, this was leading to my next question.
Yes, sir.
In this year's legislative session, there was a House Bill 19.
Yes.
I'm sure you're familiar with it.
I think I heard
it didn't
about that.
pass, but it was going to limit the amount of debt as a percentage of your property tax revenues or ad valorem tax revenues to 20%. Based on the numbers we have here of 22 and 38 cents, so that's like close to 37% of our tax-based revenues. So if we're limited, I mean, we probably should start looking at reducing the amount, and this is just on the general obligation side, on the taxpayer-supported side. Maybe start to reduce that number, because when we reduced our tax rate from 65 cents down to 60 cents, and I'm rounding, it was all in M&O, not in INS. So we should probably start looking at, I don't know where the city manager went, but we should probably start looking at reducing the amount on the INS, by, reducing that to 20 cents, or, working our way down, seeing that this is possibly coming, and make the plans that way. And if we're going to be limited in how much revenue we can do on the property tax, maybe that should move to maintenance and operations. So maybe at 20 cents and 40 cents. That capacity. Now, I know that's probably not beneficial for a financial advisor that gets a fee on selling bonds, but I think it's going to be the legislature that's going to dictate that to us.
Well, in defense of my role and position as financial advisor, I have fiduciary responsibility to the city by federal law and regulations, so we're a highly regulated industry. I don't look at how much Victor's going to make or my firm's going to make. My first and only goal, because I'm subject to federal law, is to make sure that the decisions you make and the way I'm leading you is going to be in the best interest of you and not for me. So just out of defense of my industry and myself to that. So you asked about what ratio, how much is too much. So what I would advise, I'm going to try to be diplomatic here too, what I would advise is, because that bill was presented, House Bill 19, the ratios that they're using, nobody knows where they came from. The industry believes it's just, arbitrary, maybe just try to get it as low as possible. The insertion of that ratio within that proposed bill that didn't pass, and you're right, maybe it will pass, a couple of years from now, and I'm not a financial advisor for it, which is fine, it is what it is. The ratio that they use is arbitrary. It has no meaning or background when it comes to how rating agencies and bond investors look at a city before they make a decision to lend you millions of dollars.
Okay, but they're not
projects.
I don't believe it's based on whether or not what rating agencies look at. The state legislature looks at it and how we raise taxes, or how we increase the no new revenue rate, or whatever we call it, the effective tax rate, whatever. So what has been happening is they put a limitation on our maintenance and operation.
Yes, sir.
So a lot of cities, including us, move stuff over to INS.
Yes.
Okay, so now, okay, you're going to do that, we're going to cap you on INS. Okay, so I mean, it has less to do with what your thoughts are in terms of
focus on
what. Well, your industry's view of debt with regards to city. They're more looking at it from a revenue perspective and a tax rate perspective. So you mentioned there's the financial side and there's a political side.
Yes.
It's not just us politically that are affected by this. We also have, state and federal regulations that we have to contend with.
Yeah.
So, just looking at it from their perspective, from that lens, is what we need to make sure that we keep that in mind, not just what rating agencies put forward.
Yeah, that's obviously an individual council decision, but if I could just go real quick to page 43 on the slide. What I do want to emphasize, and there's a tax rate and then INS tax rate, and they want to, dictate, or the state does, what amount you could go up or how much you could have. The tough part about the interest and sinking fund tax rate is that for the vast majority of the debt that you're using that tax rate to repay, we're all voter approved. And so the big thing that we found with House Bill 19 in our industry was that these voters in 2022, 2024, they overwhelmingly said, yes, City of Corpus Christi, you need to issue almost $300 million in debt here to take care of these projects. And so for the state to come and say, let's just do away with what the voters of Corpus Christi said in 2022, 2024, and limit how much you could access of this voter-approved amount that they gave you may not be fair to all cities. And so the INS tax rate, that's pretty sensitive because you could only use that to repay debt, and you have to, for the most part, get voter approval, which you all did, almost $300 million for these projects. And so that's the sensitivity there, and why it's not just a clear ratio that we need to look at in terms of how much debt we have outstanding.
I understand. Thank you.
Councilman Scott.
All right, let me just run through mine quickly. When our IDA agreement lasts, how many more years?
13 more years.
Okay, I
14,
appreciate the
14 more
conversation
years.
about IDAs, but I think that's a wonderful conversation to have in 10, 11, or 12 years. I also think that we talk about lack of gross income, but there's a net involved, right? So if you did take them out of IDAs, then we'd have to provide services. God help us if that happened, my opinion. I don't know much about the Senate bills or the House bills. So when people look at our long-term debt, do they include, I got the principal and interest repayments. They look at long-term lease agreements too? Is it all about long-term liabilities or it's just about debt?
No, sir. It is about the whole financial operation of a city. So that includes not only the debt repayments that you're making, but you also have legally the option to pursue what we call lease purchase agreements that are paid for your M&O side. And so when the rating agencies look at you, yeah, they're focused on the INS side, but they're also really looking at your M&O side. I know a recent discussion the council has was what should the general fund balance be? Well, that's one of the many factors that they look at because they're also looking at your M&O budget. So everything, you can't, I guess there's nothing to hide from the rating agencies and your financials because they're looking at the whole city.
I guess there's some ongoing conversations about avoiding any additional debt and taking on long-term lease agreements like water. But my point is that still shows up in long-term liabilities, and the rating agencies are going to look at all that.
Yes.
Right? And that it's going to some extent, limit what we can borrow if there is a cap?
Oh, not to some extent, to a definite extent. If you do those lease, whatever arrangement it is, where you're not issuing the debt for that project and you don't own it, but you're part of it and you're making payments on it, the rating agencies know you still have this other liability, even though you didn't issue the debt. Somebody else maybe have issued the debt, but there's nothing free in life. You know, you're going to pay for it one way. Either you issue the debt and you make those annual principal and interest payments and you're the owner, or you partner up with another agency that borrows the debt for that project, but you're going to have to sign a contract for them to sell you that product. And in that contract, it's going to have a certain amount of the debt that they have to repay to make themselves whole and make themselves profitable. So either way, both those numbers, the rating agencies are going to know that you have to factor that in your budget to, and then they determine what your financial health is going to be.
Got it. By the way, I think you do a great job, but y'all are kidding about dancing around, and I just want to note I had a fantastic question that I now have no idea what it was because there's been a lot of dancing, man. I don't know.
But that's a strategy.
I guess it worked.
Yeah, that's a strategy. You do a lot of dancing and people forget.
I'm going to go long-term dancing idea. Pay them back. I thought it was interesting. What you were saying is that we should include IDA payments because it does offset, you know, you've got this model of debt to how much per ratepayer or per citizen. But if you reduce that debt by what IDA commits to it, is that what you were trying to say? All right, that's all right. If I'm wrong, we'll talk later because I don't want to take any more time.
I was just saying that IDA agreements actually strengthen our credit position.
That's my point. And
asking for his opinion.
got it. Hey, let me just ask it this way. So you've looked at our CIP, current and future, the 10-year plan.
Yes.
Are you comfortable supporting that plan as our financial advisor?
The amount that's listed there, and I talked about earlier that it's good that you have a 10-year plan, but it's an annual year-to-year decision that you have to make and the staff has to make about whether you could still afford that plan. The affordability factor is on an annual basis and is updated each year. The affordability factor goes back to what our property valuation is as a city, what type of rates are we setting on the utility system. So the long-term 10-year plan, I could run numbers to say you could afford it, but then you're going to have to make a separate decision about what type of revenues do we have to increase to be able to continue to afford. What I could say now is that based off of your fiscal year 2026 plans, what you need, and also looking at the 2 to 3 year to 5 year range, that's where we feel comfortable with being able to project whether you can afford it. But yeah, you're okay.
You're comfortable with our 2026 to the 5 year plan. I mean, I've not heard anything from you that says, hey, you need to cut that in half, or that you should only do X amount of that. And that's fine if you do. I think that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, and it doesn't really matter what Victor thinks. What matters is the bond rating agencies think. And so we told you that they look at everything. They look at your 10-year plan, and they understand you have quite a bit of needs. And so they reviewed it, and they're still rating you at that AA category. And so it's more important what they think. But they also realize, too, just like I said earlier, it's going to be dependent each year based on what you could afford, based off your property taxes.
So are you in opposition to the 2026 CIP plan? Do you support the 2026 CIP plan?
So based off of the, let me qualify the sentence here real quick. If you go to page 45. So this is what I have to work with, and I'm grateful that the city provides this in advance, because I talked about earlier that some cities are reactionary. Based off of this, I'm comfortable that you could afford it based off of the rate settings that you have, particularly on the INS side.
Got it. I got it. Hey, is there some ratio that's, debt per capita as it goes up and average personal income growth as it goes up? That'd be interesting. Do people look at that?
Yes.
And that's got to be part of the affordability factor. Yeah. And do we have that for Corpus Christi or the Nueces County? Is that something we could see?
Yeah, that's something that we could
brag about how our personal income growth has gone up through a lot of our economic development work. I'm just be curious to see how it goes with, the debt per capita.
That's one of the ratios that the rating agencies look at.
Cool, man. Love to see that. Hey, I think you do a great job. My last note is, I didn't say this earlier, Peter, I think your whole staff has done a fantastic job. This has been a very good experience for me, and I appreciate everybody in the room. Just wanted to get that out. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Last, we have Councilwoman Vaughn.
Well, I think you did a really good job, and, Gil, he is the one that just makes the speaker feel uncomfortable, and that's just his role. So thanks, Mayor, for trying to rescue Victor, but you did a really good job, and he had some really good questions, for sure. So I don't have a lot of comments. I just want to say, when you hear something good, you said the 10-year CIP was unique. So that, to me, that is it's to you, Mr. City Manager, and I think that's good, and I think we should compliment you on that, because I like looking way down the future. I think that's important for the city to do it. So I think what you're saying is 2026 plan, to Mark's comment, looks pretty good.
It's affordable.
It's affordable, okay.
As your financial advisor, fiduciary responsibility, I could
And
say.
that's what you're supposed to tell us. That's one of the reasons we have you, so.
And if I may just real quick.
You want to backstep here?
Yeah, that's right. No, and the reason why I can't say, can you afford the full 10-year plan, because my crystal ball out of everybody's is the most foggiest. People ask me what interest rates are going to do in a year from now. I don't know. I don't know what rates are going to do next year. Same thing with the city. Its value is the economy, so it's very hard to project. But I know that when we look at this and determine if it's affordable, or are we going to be a negative position with the rating agencies or bond investors, we're going to have a difficult time finding a market for those bonds. The more immediate years are better. I may be able to better measure that and provide guidance to the city that, hey, maybe we should delay some of this, or can we readjust the priorities in terms of when we need that funding. Okay, well, I guess that's a good answer. Yes. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Victor, you dance well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
No, this was, as mentioned, this was a really very educational and informative. And at the end of the day, and I didn't mean to come in and save anybody, but I know where Gil was going with it, and I agree. I think it's an important question, and it's extremely difficult for you to say, yes, no, or here's the number. And to Mark's question too, I mean, we just want to make sure as an advisor, we're on the right path, and we have to balance it. But I really appreciate your response as to, what is a good place? It depends, right? It's not a good thing when you're delaying. We got ourselves in many years of financial issues because of delaying maintenance, et cetera. So thank you for doing a great job, and thank you for everything you've done for us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Look, great to see everybody.
Thanks, Victor. So we're going to move on. It's 11:45. We have the last one, proposed operating budget amendments.
Yes, this will go pretty quick. This is just a summary of what we have been tracking that would change the proposed budget that I presented to council about a month ago. This is just a kind of a review of it. You'll see the same on Tuesday. there's no vote on this today. It's just a summary of what we've been tracking. So today would be good if you wanted to provide any feedback on what you see here. Did we capture everything? We listed on here the street user fee as something to continue to be discussed. We think there is consensus on the council to institute it, but we didn't want to presume that. So it's just here to have another discussion today and maybe again Tuesday. So that's it. So Amy's going to present this portion of the presentation.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Amy Cowley, Director of Management and Budget. Just to recap, we have conducted 7 community input sessions throughout the city. The last one was held last night in District 2. They've all been very well attended. We've had an average attendance of about 40 citizens per session. Consistent across all of these input sessions was a message that libraries are important, right? And this includes resources and materials for our library staffing and our hours of operation. We also heard about potentially charging for our effluent water reuse program. Other comments made were related to general fees and revenues, parks amenities, pools, senior center programming, industrial district agreements, streets and sidewalks, trees, water security, public safety, unhoused services and infill housing, and stormwater. And then we've conducted 4 city council budget workshops. Our first workshop was August 7th, where we went over the general fund, the assumptions in our general fund proposed budget. On our second workshop, you heard from CCW staff on their operating and CIP budgets and proposed rate increases. On the third workshop, you heard from our Public Works Department. And then this is our final and 4th budget workshop. So to go through the budget amendments, and again, these are the items that are changing between what we provided you in our proposed budget to what we'll be bringing to you on Tuesday for adoption. This slide is specifying those changes that are in the general fund. We also have our schedule of adjustments that lists the same information attached to the agenda item for Tuesday, so it's available for the public to view there. We had some more detailed reports provided by the appraisal district after the date that we proposed the budget. When we received the detail for our TERS properties, we had to make some adjustments, so you'll see revenues being adjusted down on the TERSs. We had a slight increase in revenue in the general fund and a slight increase on the geodebt fund. For expenditures, we are removing the 16 part-time positions that were in the proposed budget for the new parks based on the project completion schedule. We shouldn't need those 16 seasonal lifeguards in FY26. That would be a need for the following fiscal year. We're adding $32,000 for the city auditor software that's been requested. We're restoring the $50,000 to libraries for books and periodicals budget. We're restoring the position to the library. And then we're increasing our transfer to the streets and the residential streets funds. This is also due to the detail received on our appraised values, the certified values. And then we're adding programming for Northwest Senior Center. These amended revenues for the general fund in total would be $341,703,752. And then the total amended expenditures would be $346,718,390. In the wastewater fund, we are bringing forward for consideration a proposal to add a fee for the effluent reuse program. In the street maintenance fund, the top section are included in the numbers currently for consideration on Tuesday, which is the increase to the street maintenance fund per policy. And then we're adding 2.8 million for tax notes. You'll see the revenue and the expense here. That is for developer participation agreement funding. And then down toward the bottom half of this slide is what we would propose that council consider is restoring a street user fee and associated expenditures. This following slide has a little bit more information on that. Just as a reminder for yourselves and our community, we did have a street user fee that was adopted in July of 2013 and went into effect January 2014. It was adopted for 10 years and it sunsetted on December 31st, 2023. And so December 2023 was the last month that we received that revenue for the street user fee. Staff is recommending that we consider reinstating this fee with an inflationary factor. It would be $6.67 per month beginning January 1, 2026, and that would generate $11.3 million in revenue for use in the street maintenance fund. The residential street reconstruction fund, the amendment that we have here is again related to the property values, a slight increase in revenues. And this is the adjustment to the TERS revenues. TERS 2 would be decreasing, total property tax revenue would be decreasing by $321,000. TERS 3, it's decreasing $181,000, and TERS 4 is decreasing $186,000, almost $187,000. We are proposing to add an appropriation for the Corpus Christi Housing and Financing Fund. This fund has not historically been part of our proposed operating budget, but we're proposing to include it based on an item that was brought forward to the board July 29th for consideration. In order for us to have the ability to authorize that spending, we would include this in the proposed budget. For the equipment replacement fund, this is essentially an in and an out. We have included new equipment purchases in the budgets for operating departments. However, we neglected to include that budget in the vehicle and equipment replacement fund, so this is correcting that. We would be, that $4 million coming into that fund is coming out of departments and is already budgeted. And then the 3.3 is the appropriation that we would need to execute that. The engineering fund, this is another correction. We did add 10 positions, if you recall, in the engineering fund with the proposed budget. As part of that, they do need vehicles. And so the proposed budget did not include this funding for vehicles, and we're correcting that with this amendment. Again, this is a slight increase to our property tax budget in the GO bond based on the property values. This is not an amendment to the proposed budget. Our FY26 proposed budget is not changing for the workers' compensation fund, but I did want to bring to your attention that there was an error on that financial statement. For FY24 actuals, the column for FY24 actuals had not been updated correctly, and so when we went back and reconciled that, it changed. As you know, the ending balance in 24 flows through 25 and 26 to our beginning balance, and so it had an overall impact in what our funds available and ending balance would be in 26. This slide shows our authorized positions. This first position that's removed from our authorized count is it had no funding impact because we were transferring a position from the general fund to the facilities fund. We did transfer those funds in the proposed budget, and we did add the position in the facilities fund. We just neglected to remove it from the count on the general fund, so this is a correction. Then it reflects the reduced 16 part-time positions from parks, restoring the library position, and that amends our total general fund position count to 2,141 positions. There's no change to enterprise fund positions, internal service fund positions, or special revenue fund positions. And so the total proposed operating positions would be 4,074. And then we did have a correction to the health grant-funded positions. We had it at 31, and it should have been 41. So that increases our total grant-funded positions to 92, and total amended city position count to 4,166. This is a nice chart that shows our position count year over year. You can see a 5-year history with the previous 4 years adopted position counts and our proposed position counts. On the left side, you'll see the civilian positions, part-time and full-time. And then on the right side, you can see our public safety positions for firefighters and police officers. And of note, you can see that we did increase police officers and firefighters by 5 each in the proposed budget. Our next steps, well, today we're here to review the amendments that we're bringing before you on Tuesday. These items that you've seen in this presentation are reflective of the feedback we've received from yourselves and from the community in the last month. The one item that's not included in the budget for Tuesday is that street user fee that we hope to hear from you today, some direction. And then on Tuesday, September 2nd, will be our first public hearing and reading of the budget. That agenda that's posted, like I said, does have that schedule of adjustments, and it's posted on our Legistar system. Any changes from the discussion today, we would bring forward to you on Tuesday for consideration. And then on September 9th, we do have a public hearing and second reading on the budget where we hope to adopt the FY26 budget. Just a reminder, the budget must be balanced. So any changes one direction would need to have an offsetting change in the other direction. The new fiscal year starts on October 1st. And any amendments would need to really have a net zero impact on our overall financial statement. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amy. Councilwoman Vaughn.
Just a couple of questions. Okay, on the libraries. So you've got, what was the position that you're restoring? Where was the library, which library was that?
This was the branch manager at the Hart Library. So that position will be restored, and the department is looking at how to best utilize that position, knowing that there were still some operational changes there.
So how many positions are over there now? How many do you have?
At the Hart Library specifically? I'm not sure, ma'am. I'd have to get that for you.
The library director can help on that.
Laura Garcia, Library Director. We just have one manager position, which was vacant. And then we have 4 library assistants and a youth services librarian.
So you have 4 library assistants?
Assistants, yes.
One that's vacant?
The manager position is the one that's vacant.
And that's the one you're filling?
Yes.
Okay. How big is that library?
Like square footage?
Just, I'm curious how big it is.
About 13,000 square feet or so.
Okay. And you're saying you're restoring books? What's that exactly mean, restoring books for the libraries?
That would be the position. What was also cut was the books and periodicals collection funds.
Oh.
And it's not just for that location. That one is actually housed at the Lauritama Library, the fund itself, and from there we distribute to the other branches, to the other 5 branches as well.
Yeah, Councilwoman, the proposed budget reflected what the school district was suggesting, how we modify hours, which I think cut them more than in half. But since that time, with Councilwoman Paxson, we've been in the community, and we've restored quite a few hours. In fact, if we open that branch on Sunday, it will be almost restored to what it was prior to the reduction in hours.
Okay.
So the reduction in the book budget was reflective of it being open less, but now we'll probably open about the same. So we're saying, let's restore the book budget. Same with the position. It was a branch manager, and Laura's, it may not be a branch manager per se, which is a higher level, higher cost position. It may be something in between some of the positions there.
It'll all be dependent, like the city manager saying, on the hours that we finally settle on. But that's the individual that oversees the branch, does the collection for that branch and so forth, supervises the staffing and so forth.
Okay, it's just been such a big issue. I want to make sure I understand it.
Yes,
Because it
yes,
will probably come back
understood.
up. Okay, thank you. Mr. Sinoni, so have you got all the positions filled? Do you keep them on the budget thing, the positions you don't have filled that you're wanting to fill?
What we do nowadays is we reduce the salary line item. So if a department has a pattern of having certain number of positions vacant, it's not the same one, but this turnover factor that happens.
Okay.
We reduce the total amount of personnel services budget to be reflective of patterns we see year over year. So take Public Works, so some of those frontline, street production crew positions are hard to keep filled because of the toughness of the job. It doesn't mean the same position's vacant for 12 months, but people come and go, and so there's a natural turnover rate.
Okay.
And so we reduce the personnel line item budget to reflect that. So we're not funding personnel at 100%.
Yeah.
It's a lesser amount based on patterns of vacancy rate.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And my last one was on the grant-funded total over there for, health grants. Correct error positions. Explain, what is that? I mean, it's grant-funded total proposed positions.
This
That's
didn't.
what we got the grant for, so we keep them as long as we've got the grant.
Correct. And this doesn't change the total dollar amount associated with those grants. It was a clerical error in our position schedule.
Okay.
We put it in the proposed budget as 31, but it should have been 41.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilwoman Campos.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I just want to also say thank you to the staff, to everyone for all your hard work. I really do appreciate it. And I also wanted to just say that, yesterday we held our last input session. And one of the things, because it was the last and it's so close to us already voting on the budget, which is next week for the first reading, it really came to mind about, how much we really would like to include some of the suggestions or some of the desires that the community actually has. So I stated last night, I would like to see us start way earlier with the input sessions. I think staff starts looking at the budget, I don't know, in March, but I am grateful that Mr. Zanoni did bring that as one of the, tenets, when you were hired here, is to bring the input session. So I'm really grateful for that. But I think just like the public comments, we made some few changes, and I feel like it's improved. We probably can still improve some more, but I think I'd like to see us go, a lot sooner than later. I would like to see it in March, but that's just my preference. I also just wanted to ask about, I know it wasn't part of the library budget per se, but it was mentioned last night about the social worker that was housed there. I don't know if that's still going on at the Rotama, but that person was, I believe, helping, some individuals, and they were really taking advantage of that. Is that still going on?
So we have a partnership with Texas A&M Kingsville, their social work program. And so during the school sessions, if we get someone that wants to come and do like their practicum and so forth, that's where they come. And we've done that for about maybe now 3 years. And so they come during the sessions, the school sessions, and they provide a certain amount of hours depending on what they need. And so we do let the individuals know that they're not they don't have their degree yet, but they're working towards it. And like I said, it's part of a practicum that we've been doing with them. Okay. And so it just depends. Sometimes they'll provide maybe 20 hours a week. It just depends on what's needed. And so one of the things that we have looked at, and yesterday I actually got someone else that I think there's a program also at Del Mar, and they also want to participate, so we're working through that. We will be looking at trying to see if there's any type of grant program out there. At one point, the state library was providing grants towards something like that, but I haven't recently looked to see if that's still a possibility.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Laura. And I also just wanted to mention about the vacancy rate. Yesterday, I had my meeting with Ernie de la Garza, and he just mentioned how Manuel had done a video about, vacancies for the city, and how they were able to fill a lot of those positions. I understand, I just heard Mr. Zanoni say that, that the public works is difficult to fill, but I'm not sure if that's exactly the case, but I'm just saying that, as far as I know, it does help, to just go outside the box to fill some of these positions, because we have them budgeted. I mean, that would provide a job, and, would help everybody. So
Yeah,
anyway.
Councilwoman, just to make sure I was clear, so it's not necessarily difficulty to fill, but it's sometimes difficult to retain once somebody actually gets in that work environment where it's 100 and feels like 110, and then you're dealing with 200-degree asphalt. And so folks can tend to say, I can't wait to get this job. Then when they get in it, they're like, oh my God, I need to get to the next job.
Okay.
So that's also, some of the positions have challenges just because of the rigor, the toughness, the elements that we can't control, like the temperature and the temperature of the asphalt. But we try to make accommodations to make their workplace tolerable or enjoyable, to include having shelter-in-place breaks with shade and drinks like Gatorade, that type of thing, right? So naturally, there's a toughness in some of these jobs, tougher than others. And so our job is to overcome that and try to make it as accommodating as we can. But even then, sometimes it's, what happens.
Well, and I just appreciate that department because of that, because it is, it's not for everyone, to be out there like that. And I know that that department, and I'm sure all the different departments does, maybe, I don't know, but show their appreciation. I've been invited, since I've been elected, to their annual, I guess, appreciation barbecue or luncheon or something. And it's just so nice to see the camaraderie there and the appreciation. And so, again, thank you to all the departments, but especially Public Works. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. A couple of things. I agree. I think that it's a little too close together. Whoever ends up being, I guess y'all do it, we do it in order. No, we don't do it in order, because that would have been 5. The input sessions, her input session was the last one, right? And then you already have this planned out, and I don't know that really is enough time. I think it's important, right, that we have enough time for the input to really be taken into consideration. So maybe we can move those up, or, I don't know. And the other thing, I think they're great. The input sessions, we didn't have them before, as was mentioned.
Well, we have 7 too now.
But I think when we have 300,000 people in a city, and you have 40 people on average that attend these, we're not really hearing everyone. And I know that's a very difficult thing, to do, which is why now we've implemented the text messaging. But that's why it's so important for that to grow, because if we were able to text people, can you imagine how much input we would really get about, here's where I'd like my tax dollars to go, or this department, not this department. We would just get so much more input. And this is really about hearing from as many people as possible. So I would just challenge you, Peter, to think about, or have staff think about, how else. I understand we have to grow the base as far as texting, but how else can we reach more people? Most people, they work, they get home at 5, 5:30, 6, they have kids, that's their priority. 40 people showing up, hey, 40 people, that's great. I'd love to know the ages of those 40 people, because it's difficult when you have families, but there's got to be, we can come up with a better way to reach more people, to hear how they feel about their tax dollars being spent. Just a challenge for staff.
That's good. Yeah, we're improving every year. So as an example, we had 5 districts that we went to. Now we do 7. We've modified the program to make it more family-friendly from time to time. Last year, as an example, we had that eating establishments, that type of thing. But I would submit that most cities, they struggle. It's not just our city with citizen participation in a lot of topics, including the budget, but that doesn't mean we don't continue to try. So we did do a survey, as a reminder, early this year, and the results were pretty consistent with what we heard out there in the districts in our town hall meetings. But we can move some of the engagement earlier in the process.
Yeah.
And see as well. So we appreciate the challenge, and we'll, as we've done every year, make adjustments to better meet the needs of the community and get more engaged. The age group at our workshops was pretty diverse. It was young 18-year-olds to retired seniors, and in between, there were parents there that said, I have X number of little kids at home, and so it's not just a particular age group, which was nice to see. At all 7 of them was a pretty wide range of age spectrum, which we like to see.
How was the survey done?
What was that?
How was the survey done?
The survey early in the year was a phone survey, Heather? Or
It was
what
online survey.
Online survey?
Yes.
An online survey. I think we talked to the council about it, and when was that, in March? Or
It was in May.
in
June.
May? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was not too long of a survey, but it said if you had, it asked them to kind of develop their own budget if there was, right?
Basically to rank
Yeah.
priorities.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so. point
Yeah,
taken.
that was
I
just,
think
that
that's
was a
good-
new thing we did this year,
Right.
and that helped. It guided us in the recommendations and the budget for the council.
Or maybe like utility bills, but anyway, that's just
Okay.
my little challenge there.
Yeah.
Because I'd just love to see more people.
Absolutely.
Get involved.
Okay.
Councilman Hernandez.
Yeah, so with the changes that you're recommending, was there any changes to our own reserve balance in the general fund? I think we had it about 180,000.
Minimal. It actually increases slightly because of the adjustment to general fund revenues.
Okay.
The expenses were offset by that.
Okay, I know the city secretary's office was short about $53,000. I want to add that back into the budget that they needed for, because I think it's going to reflect on the personnel that are in there and holding something open for a certain period of time, but that might affect the assistance we have for council.
Right.
So I want to make sure that, I mean, it's not a significant amount.
We can restore that.
So
Yes,
please,
sir.
please.
Yeah, we'll put that on for Tuesday.
Okay.
It was a position that would be partially unfunded for the year, but
Right.
given that we got a little bit more property tax with the final roll, that'll allow us to restore that.
Okay, and secondly, I'll say this again, I'm not for reinstituting the street user fee onto the utility bill. There are no protections on the utility bill if you don't pay them, right? Unlike property tax, where you have some protections for people over the age of 65 or people that are over or are disabled, there's no protections on the utility bill. And we have a lot of upward pressure from water, wastewater, and stormwater on the utility bill. I don't want to add more to that. I would recommend us going and asking for whether it's a referendum or whatever, we still have those 2 cents that we can go back and ask for. And if we need to ask for more than that, then we should do a referendum. We could do it in May if we need to. But I think it should be through the normal process of funding it through the general fund, through our normal funding levels, not creating something that may prevent people from being able to pay their utility bill.
Yeah.
Okay?
I agree
That's
with that.
my opinion. Thank you.
I agree with that. Okay, there being no further questions, I want to thank everybody, staff, all the directors, everybody that did you have something?
I just didn't know if I saw Councilwoman Paxton's
Councilwoman.
lights on.
I'd already turned the light on, that's why.
Thank you, Peter.
Hey,
Thank
let
you,
me
Mayor.
scratch that. Go ahead.
No, real quick. I know some of the feedback that we saw was suggestions to hold, yes, the public input sessions a little earlier, but some on the weekend. And my thoughts were going to something like maybe in the mornings at the parks, doing, combining things like those really great Parks and Recs days that we have, where we have the amphitheater in full swing, we have some bounce houses, things like that. Not necessarily to make a full event out of it, but to just really embrace that community element, get multiple things accomplished at one time. And I feel like we may have spoken in the past about the survey being, you said there's a section in there that's kind of build your budget, but I think what I'd like to see in most of our surveys, if we were to embrace a little bit more open-fielded type questions, because I think sometimes when we kind of get in these assumptions of categorizing things, there's a lot more of the story that maybe we don't think of. And I think I like those open fields to be really included so people can flesh out ideas organically.
And just so you know, we did have one field where we asked, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us or that you'd like us to know? And we did receive quite a few responses.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your presentation today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, Sylvia, go ahead.
I just would like to add to that about the different options that hopefully we'll be discussing about the input sessions. But it kind of would be nice to have like one big general input session, just at least one, where I know it's different districts, but I'm just saying, sometimes if you've only got that last chance that it's for, even though we know it's for different districts.
Yeah.
I'm just saying like to have like a big buildup and say, this is the last big venue, the best event that you can attend and, really publicize it.
There's a required public hearing at City Council in this room, and so that's one example. But I would agree with you all, especially if the state caps our revenues at 1%,
Yes.
tough choices are going to have to be made because there is no more revenue. So we're talking about, do we cut what? Parks, animal care, libraries?
And how do we?
So the community really is going to have to come out and help you and us on what do we want to keep? That's the question. If we're capped at 1% revenue, then we don't, and property taxes are one of only 2 revenue sources of significance in the general fund. So more than ever, we have to do this call to the community, like we've been talking about at our library meetings. And they've been coming out, and so we need to hear them. And so we'll be especially doing that next year.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, last night, it was mentioned she saw it in the news just like an hour before or something, it was just, she saw it and she came. So, we always could do a better job at advertising and getting it out. And like you say, maybe in a utility bill.
Right, and that's the challenge. 'Cause I think we do a better job just getting the word out. We can't always reach everyone, but I think we could do better than 40.
Yeah,
On
we
average.
agree. So that's why we'll keep working on it.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so thank you to staff, thank you to everybody. Victor, thanks for being here today. All these, the 3 presentations were great, very educational, and we will look to wrap this up next week.
Yeah, next Tuesday. We do have this, we did get a comment this morning from one of the council members to reconsider the agenda for next week in terms of what gets done first, but we did put the budget on the agenda first for next week, but that's, it could be.
Right, I saw that, yes, I was going to talk with you all.
Yeah, because we also have some other big items next week on the agenda as well, but.
Okay.
But what this gives you today is this is what will be presented on Tuesday, so you have between now and Tuesday to talk it over, call us if you have questions. We got the 2 amendments from today's meeting, one to restore the secretary's position, and secondly, to add a CIP page for the Evangeline project. We'll put that in 27 for now, FY 27, and so that page will be in the budget so people can see it and have reference to it. And then if there's any other changes, just let us know, and of course, we'll be here Tuesday to collect those as well. Okay?
Hang on. Let's see here. Actually, since we're online, we should probably make that change now so more people can hear it.
Which one was that?
Well, we can't change, right? We can't make changes to the agenda?
Oh, no, the agenda's posted, but you.
That's what I mean, the posted one.
Yeah, but you can, as you know, the chair can modify.
No, I know, but
things.
I'm talking about, we can't change the agenda.
We cannot change it, no, by state law now, it's
Yep.
it's posted and we can't change it. It has to be, how many days?
Right.
It has to be posted 3 business days prior to the meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, no, but I think, and I agree with you, I think, people are looking at the agenda, that's the hesitation. They're looking at the agenda, now we can't change it, and those items are what numbers?
The desalinization item and the loan are towards the end of the agenda because the
They're
individual.
towards the end, right, after a whole lot of budgetary items. So I would like to move them forward, and this might be a good opportunity, since we're online, to let the public know and maybe put it out there. Again, my concern is people that are looking at the agenda saying, oh, they're not going to be
Yeah, let
on
me just
until
ask Buck
later.
real quick. Can the content, if we're not changing the content, just the order, could you repost it or?
I would say that it's not uncommon for the council to change the item, the order of items they review. I mean, it's commonly done.
Yeah, the question is, can we repost the agenda?
No, that's already posted. That's posted.
Okay, Mayor, we'll do what we did similarly, which is we put a news release out, and I forget what it was, to say we're going to consider these first. Yeah.
Councilwoman Vaughn has a good point. We're reading each other's eyes, but.
We get trashed up here. And if they do not know, I mean, they've been watching that agenda, if they do not know we're going to do that, but I agree, I wished it had been up further, but if they don't know, they are going to get ticked off. It's just an idea. If y'all don't mind them coming up here, I'm used to it now, so it doesn't bother me.
Well,
but I'm just
Councilman had,
saying.
it was a suggestion, and I think it was a good one, because we all know how long the day is. Put your, yeah.
I just feel like this vote is the biggest vote that we're going to have on our political career, so so I just want to make sure, you know.
Okay, so you want to, we can leave it.
Let's just leave it then.
Let's just leave it.
It's on you, Carolyn.
Take some breaks. Okay, all righty. Well, there being no further business, this meeting is now adjourned.